celebrates the past, present, future, history, legacy, and tradition of the greatest pro wrestling entity of all time. We're talking about that National Wrestling Alliance. And as always, I am joined by my boys. My boys are, hey, it's Will.Daily. Hey, Will.
Hey.
And our Stinson 4. That's their Twitter handles.
That's right.
Hey, it's Will. Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you right up top of the show for matching the enthusiasm that I brought into that intro. It really helps me keep it up. And thank you very much.
Okay.
The Fortson has joined us. We're going to talk about Fortson has questions about Carnyland. I saw tons of questions about Carnyland, and of course, we are here to talk about Carnyland.
Let's talk about it.
That's primary issues at hand, but this is the NWA After Dark. So keep in mind that everything is on the table. Whatever you guys want to talk about, as long as it's not something shitty. I mean, I should have said that already too early. I can't bleep myself now, but we're not monetized, so it doesn't matter. Thank you guys for being here. So we watched it tonight. We'll start here. This is what's on everybody's mind. Right up at the top of the hour here is Carnyland. There is a mayoral election occurring in Carnyland. And tonight we met all of the candidates of Carnyland. I guess we'll start, unless you guys have something you want to say around first, I'll just start running down the show. We'll just start at the top and then just see where this takes us. Sound good?
Yep, let's go for it.
All right.
Do it.
So let's get this out of the way right up at the top. There was a very heavy promo from Eddie Kingston, the Mad King himself. Nobody does a promo like Eddie Kingston does a promo. And it was very heavy is just the word that I can think of, just about racism and such. The only thing I want to say about that, really, I mean, nobody can say it better than him. So just, be nice, people. Be compassionate, as Dr. Stinson always says. Don't be racist. Don't be a dickhead. That's it. Anything you guys want to add to that?
He said it all, man. I mean, we talk about it before, but Eddie Kingston's authenticity just shines through in his promos and his work, and this was no exception. So I just love that they're finding ways to include him, because from the all appearances, he's not really Carnyland material when it comes to like the slapstick funny. So I am glad that they're incorporating him the way that they have.
Man, I Eddie Kingston, nobody matches his passion. I mean, I think that anybody who has a public relations campaign or a movement, they need to enlist Eddie Kingston, because you hear him talk and he is so compelling. And this is a man with a huge heart. I know he's a tough guy and he comes from the streets and this and that, but this is a very sensitive, very, very huge hearted guy. And he said, stop with the racism already. There's nothing else to it. And he's right. There's nothing else to it. There's no place for racism. That's something that this is the NWA podcast, wholeheartedly embrace. So if you have a movement that you want to mobilize and you need somebody to be your spokesperson, you're a fool if you don't consider Eddie Kingston as your mouthpiece.
The Fortson's in the chat asking if we're getting Whiskey Gary, Thirsty Gary, or Power Tools Gary tonight. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. I did get here straight off of watching Thunder Rosa's new video. If you guys haven't seen it, don't leave it and go watch it now, but watch it later. It's very nice. It's short and to the point. She's just trying out some beers. She talks about her recent love for craft beer. And so it got me in a beer drinking mood. So that's what Gary's doing. The truth is that the wife gets a little worried when Whiskey Gary's on live. So that's and I try to keep myself upright and straight and assertive. So Whiskey Gary will be back someday, but not today. All right. So we get a vision of Stu in his new form. I don't know how they're going to carry that over into NWA Powerrr when that returns, but for now, Stu is at a podium. He's a week into the future, and he's letting us know that there's going to be an election in Carnyland, and when this happens a week from now, well, before it happens, we're in the primary stages, and a week from now, somebody's already going to step down. So it sounds like maybe they're going to drag this out like every week. Maybe somebody drops out or something. But if you were concerned about politics, worry no more. Carnyland has its own now. And,
so are we going to
hopefully they stay lighthearted.
So the Fight TV logo, I might have missed something. Is there like a partnership there, or what was that reference? I mean, the background had the Fight logo.
Is that what Stu was at the podium?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be honest with you. You guys can discuss this. I totally missed that somehow. I did not notice it. And I saw people talking about it, but all I can tell you I do know about Fight TV is that, I mean, they do have a partnership in the way of NWA as far as they carry the pay-per-views, and NWA Powerrr does air on Fight Television, Fight TV, although I call it television. But anyway, right. So there's that. But
yeah,
so
there was already a partnership. For some reason, I wasn't aware of that, and I thought that was like a big announcement or something. And so I started.
There always seems to be some discussion, though. I mean, it's like every day someone talks about an enhanced partnership between Fight and the NWA, and so that seemed like a little kind of like an Easter egg to me. That's what I thought. I don't know that, but that's how I interpreted it.
Well, it would be really interesting just to, not to already get on into the, NWA is actually in the chat pointing out that Fight, welcome company. It's good to see you.
Welcome.
Fight is our pay-per-view provider. Right? So that's what they say.
Okay. Well,
and
we just go straight to the source here. Like we're not going to speculate. We just get them in here and we get the answers. Straight from the source. Thank you.
People that'll say that'll wonder about.
Hey, I hate to do this to you guys. I'm sorry to cut you off, Rob, but
here we go.
Man, we can't do one of these stinking shows without somebody knocking at my door. They want to come in, so I'm just going to let them in and let's see who we got today. Somebody wants to join the show.
What?
Oh my gosh!
Oh my goodness!
It's David Marquez,
and he's sideways.
David?
Am I well?
Why are you sideways, David Marquez?
Well, I've been in the wrestling business for 30 years, so I kind of let's see if I do this.
There you go.
That made it better.
Beautiful.
The TV director in me is kind of messing with the headroom and stuff, so I'm trying to maybe sit on something to make it.
I was gonna ask you if we could get some people to fill in the back there, just crowd in.
Well,
these seats.
The irony in that anymore is that I'm not going to be able to ask people to do it. No one's ever going to be there again. So man, folks in the chat, you were in for a treat. David Legata is actually in the chat, and he just yelled out, "Because you're here, Carnyland." So I don't know. Yeah, he would know.
David Marquez, thank you for hanging out with us, man. It's really cool to see you. I don't think we've officially had you on the show ever before, and so this is the first time, and you're live with the live audience. Obviously, I'm Gary. You're here with Robert Stinson and Will Martin. We're doing our we call it "This is the NWA After Dark" is what we call this. So
cool.
Whatever anybody wants to talk about. We were running down Carnyland. Did you have a chance to watch Carnyland today?
I watched it out of the corner of my eye today, so I know there's candidates running for mayor. I know May Valentine had some issues in Las Vegas. And what else did I see? I really enjoyed Talking the Time. Talking the Time? Was that what it was?
Mm-hmm.
With the question mark? I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's an interesting show. Like we saw you on the first episode, I think, and then you've been conspicuous by your absence. Where have you been, David? How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm in Sherman Oaks, California right now. It's about 85 degrees out here. It's really warm for this time of the year, but for this time of the year, it should be cooler by now. But I'm working on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Championship Wrestling from Arizona, the United Wrestling Network each and every day. That's my day job. And from a Carnyland perspective, I've not been given an assignment again. So, so I don't know if I sucked or not.
What's going on, Lagana? I know you're out there. I know you see this. Thunder Rosa's husband is in the chat also, Brian, and he is calling for you to be the mayor of Carnyland. So
No, he said the governor.
Well, he did say the governor, but I'm not sure that makes sense. So I was trying to roll with it. But anyway, David, it's an honor to have you here, and I love that you seem so like you're lounging, like you are out in the sun, and this is exactly the kind of stuff we want to see. I think it like makes everything feel light, because we just like got off this conversation about the promo from Eddie Kingston, and it kind of reminds you of everything that's going on in the world.
Sure.
And yeah, so tough times for everybody. But how are like, you seem like you've picked up production with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and everything else. I've seen you guys putting out like content on YouTube and stuff like that. Do you feel like things are picking up for you guys?
Yeah, we had to, because we're in reruns right now. Like NWA Powerrr, they don't have a commitment to stations. I have 52 weeks that I have to deliver every year, or they might cancel the show, you know? So I had to make the decision to go back into reruns of the Hollywood show and the Arizona show. We went back, I think 16 weeks, starting in March. And we've been running those, but here in California, our governor just opened up production and the facilities again. So we're going to go back into production probably by the end of this month, early July, in producing new programming again with our episodes. It will be without fans there, but we're working on a way to hopefully virtually bring some people in. I'll have more information about that once we figure out if it works. But yeah, so we're going back into production with it. And the stuff you're seeing online is there's a dual purpose for it. One is to re-educate people about not just the United Wrestling Network, but also go back a little bit too in the NWA and the origins of my time in the National Wrestling Alliance, and mostly around broadcasting. And it really does come full circle where we are with NWA Powerrr. David Lagana was a producer on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood in the very beginning. So back in studio, the Columbia Square studios, CBS Columbia Square, you'll see some behind the scenes footage and some match footage from way back then that David helped produce, all the way going into Powerrr. And I kind of explained the history of the program, how the origin of it, why it even exists, the NWA tie-ins to it, and how basically studio wrestling is popular again. And I joke constantly about people have called me the king of studio wrestling because I've done it for so long. And at times it feels like a backhanded compliment, but in reality, everyone is doing it out of necessity. The WWE, AEW, AAA in Mexico, and even New Japan Pro Wrestling will be doing some studio wrestling stuff here shortly. So it's a very interesting time that the resources that I've had and the budgets that I have had kept us inside of studios, and now everyone is stuck in a studio. So I guess I'm in the I'm in the in crowd again.
Well, yeah, it seems like, I mean, you guys were built to obviously nobody wanted any of this to happen, but you were almost I've said this about the NWA too with the studio show, but obviously you've been doing it even longer. It was like you were built to pivot into this scenario. Like, it almost seems like you would have a plan for it, whereas it felt like WWE, especially, like they scrambled for a while. Like, it still feels like they're still figuring out what they're supposed to be doing. Not trying to talk trash, but like everything changes every week, and it seems like they just don't know how to do this thing. So it's kind of a cool position to see folks like you in. And I'm a big fan of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I want to say that. And you are also one of our most requested people I've ever had since I've been doing this. And I've been doing this for like 2 years. So and you really are. People ask about you a lot. It's crazy. it's not, it's so strange to me. It's not strange to me because I get it as a fan of wrestling and what I'm seeing, that like the most requested people a lot of times for this podcast, like for me to talk to sometimes, are people like you and Sal Renaro. And it's like the people that I think a lot of people wouldn't expect necessarily. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like Nick Aldis, who's obviously the world's heavyweight champion. And not that anybody hates what I've taught to Nick Aldis, but it's just like they want to hear like these people that have these stories, and like the stories that maybe not everybody has. You, though, where I was trying to get to is that you have always been intimidating to me. And we've talked at the studio show and stuff like that. But you've had so much history in this thing, and history with the NWA that I think is really cool and really valuable. It's but it's history that honestly I'm not super familiar with, and I've been trying to educate myself on over the last couple of years. And so I always felt like I'm not going to know how to talk to him. I'm not going to know like all the right questions to ask for the studio, or for the NWA, like during that time period with what do we hear it called, Robert? The wilderness years, all the time and stuff, and like Marquez.
The wilderness years.
Well, have you not heard that?
No, I've never heard that. What is that?
It's that period of time, and I there are about 6, 7, or 8 of us actually love that period, where they didn't have major TV deals. Jay Cal's always out there. I mean, you think that the Adam Pearce years, what you've been doing in Hollywood, those are some of the most vibrant times ever in the history of the NWA. But people call the wilderness years because it's like the time from when the NWA had national level attention to this sort of innocuous period where they weren't on TV, and then the reemergence here with what Corgan's doing. Wilderness, I don't take it as an insult. It's just sort of like, there seemed to be a long time when the NWA, when the 10 pounds of gold was used like a gimmick, kind of like it was used in the WWF for a minute, and when it was kind of paired with the TNA belt, where it wasn't the prize, there was the X title that they had in TNA. I think that's what people are getting at. I don't think they mean to throw shade on the NWA at all, because those really, like, for me, Adam Pearce is one of the greats ever. He's up there with a Dory Funk and a Terry Funk and a Pat O'Connor for his contributions, but it's just an unfortunate designation.
Yeah. Well, so you're talking about probably 2004 to maybe 2012. So we can go back to TNA if you want. So that whole deal was put together by Jerry Jarrett. So Jerry understood what he needed to get TNA over to the fans. And I make this analogy a lot. Half of it's joking, but half of it's true. And I'm not offending anyone, I hope, but I probably will by saying this. The NWA is an awful lot like Donald Trump. It can't do wrong to some people. Those 3 letters will get you through tons of doors if you're talking to the right people. So even with me I was vice president of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and in the dojo in Los Angeles, and we tried producing some NJPW USA shows back then, but nobody cared because it was New Japan Pro Wrestling in the United States. It's always had a niche market. But it's never been presented in the States as a standalone as they're trying to do now. So if you go back and think of the WWF relationships, the WWF relationship, the stuff here in Los Angeles with the LaBelle family, WCW, and even TNA, and I did the deal at TNA. I'm the one who created that relationship because that was part of my job. That's how I got back into the NWA, was because Antonio Inoki was the member in Japan, and he would send me to the meetings. And so I was his proxy, and I had a vote. But not only did I have just a vote, I had a very strong vote because everybody wanted to be in business with New Japan. So I had a lot of leverage at that time. Also at that time, the organization was so backwards that we had figurehead presidents that did absolutely nothing. Bill Behrens was a solid guy. Dave Republic, his stage name in Vancouver, a great guy. And there's a few others. I just don't want to start naming people and leave a lot of good folks out. Bob Trowbridge was our attorney, and he was also the attorney for Jim Crockett Promotions. He was part of the deal of selling Jim Crockett Promotions to Turner Broadcasting. So he knew where a lot of bodies were buried to begin with. But getting the NWA name back out there, the only reason why I jumped on it was because I had to sell New Japan Pro Wrestling somehow, much like how Jerry Jarrett did the exact same thing with TNA, because I knew it could open doors. And the New Japan name couldn't at that time. Now it's a whole lot more publicized, but it's still a niche product. And you're not going to be able to get on anything necessarily because of the theming and the presentation of New Japan, of it being a sport and real, that, you know, broadcasters look at it and they're just kind of like, but that's not what the other big companies are doing. So that's why it doesn't get off of more of a network like Access. It's going to be very difficult for them to get a bigger channel. But anyhow, those years, I accidentally stepped back into the NWA as being a proxy. And then after a year or two of representing New Japan at the meetings, the member in California didn't pay his dues. And I'm sorry if you could hear my dog, he's trouble sometimes.
It's all right.
But he didn't pay his dues. And so Bob Trowbridge looked at me and he made the joke and he said, "Hey, do you want 2 votes?" Because the NWA virtually ran like Continental Congress. Like, it really was ridiculous, and backwoods and whatever else. So I thought about it, and you know, talk about Carnyland. I said, "So what's the membership fee?" And then at that meeting, it was when we walked into that weekend, it was $1,500 to join. By the time they realized that they could have a brand new member, it was $3,000. So I paid $3,000 and I became the member in California. And so then I had 2 votes. And so I was everyone's friend or everyone's enemy. And it was just like government, how we couldn't buy a box of pencils unless, you know, 26 of us agreed to spend the $1.60 to buy a box of pencils. So at any rate, the Adam Pearce years, that was a long way to get to this. Seeing that Bob, once we elected him as our executive director and he was in charge of everything, and after the TNA relationship was over, because we pulled that. A lot of people think TNA got rid of us. That's not the truth. We were tired of them, and we killed the deal, and we took our property back. It was a licensing agreement. So Ed Schumann in Chicago, he's passed since. He was NWA Midwest. You know, he was really big. He backed me. Bill, for the most part, backed me. Bob backed me. And so we brought the championships back, and we created the Reclaiming the Glory tournament to create a new champion. And if you look at the participants in that tournament, it's virtually a who's who of today's pro wrestling. It was a really good field of talent. Much like NWA Powerrr is today, when you look at it, it's the same, you know, quality and caliber of wrestler. But we did that. And then I went to that meeting that year, whatever year that was. And I told everybody we all need to do local television. And everyone laughed at me. And everyone told me that no TV station, because a lot of the times you have to buy your way on the air, like a paid program. And I told them, no, I can get on, and I'm going to get on in LA. And I, hook or crook, we went around, we figured it out, and made a deal with KDOC TV, and we've been on for 10 years. But like, it's interesting, you say like the NWA didn't have a big presence during that time. We were on satellite TV. I meet people all the time. We were the very first non-racing program on MAV TV, which has pretty good distribution. We were the very first show on this multicultural channel called Colors. Didn't last long, but it was on Direct and Dish available in about 35 million homes. So I meet people all the time at shows or in public, and they're like from Wisconsin or Vermont or Maine, and they'll say, "Hey, I'm getting to the ages. Hey, I used to watch you as a kid on Mav TV or on Colors or whatever." So people who are not necessarily super smart to the internet wrestling side of things, who still watch rabbit ear TV, which is an awful lot of people, they know what was going on this entire time, just like the traditional way of wrestling has always been. So when Cabana won the championship from Pearce at our shows here in LA, it was the first time really we saw social media interaction of talents and executives and announcers and other companies congratulating Cabana in winning the title. And I got to say, Dave Lagana was a big part of that too, because he made sure that he was standing by with his camera to capture it, to put it right away on Twitter, I believe, and right away on Facebook or MySpace or whatever it was at the time. But he was David's always been very smart to the next thing, the next innovation. Unfortunately, I'd rather use a Smith Corona and write with a Ticonderoga #2. That's me, David, and I'm only about a year and a half older than David. So, I mean, we grew up in the same time period in the same entertainment, but he is way more future thinking with technology than I ever will be. So at any rate, there was a lot of awareness, and we made a lot of money, by the way. Like, I don't say this lightly. I like to rephrase it now that I'm older, but I made millions in the NWA, millions of dollars doing arena shows and television and commercial deals. I used to say I lost millions, but I've invested millions in myself, and I'm still here today. So I'm not a real public person when it comes to just screaming out information or giving numbers and all that, because my other background is I come from the Walt Disney Company in Disneyland in operations. And like at Disney, if you call them and they're like, "Hey, how many people are there today?" or "How many people visit Disneyland in a year?" they'll never give you a number. Disneyland never relieves that. Disney never releases that information. And the reason is you're now held to a standard and you have to beat that. That's why, like, the ratings now, when you hear about the ratings wars or whatever, and everyone bitches and argues about a point or a half a point or whatever it is, AEW did this, NXT did that. No, it's ridiculous, because what really should matter are the sweeps numbers, what happens 3, 4, 5 times a year, which set the advertising rates for the show, not the week to week. That doesn't matter. It's really a week or two at the end of certain quarters. So that's what should really be important. So like with me, for years, I never released numbers. I never said anything, because you always have to meet that expectation and beat it. And in this type of wrestling, it's very difficult to beat those numbers. So I never wanted to put myself out there. And, like as an example with NWA Powerrr, I watched the chat the last couple of weeks. And yeah, it's not getting the big numbers like it was as wrestling matches, for sure. It's not the same programming, and some people are just not into it. But I'm reading like some of the comments of people saying like, "Oh, the NWA sucks now. There's no matches. Oh, look, there's only 300 people watching." It's like, no, that's not cool. Not at all. You go back and look at the other stuff we did, more than 500,000 views on one, 400,000 on another. The NWA shows Powerrr has made a big dent, and you can't just put heat on the show or any of the broadcasts right now, because people's minds are elsewhere, and pro wrestling is the last thing on their mind when there's looting and viruses and all this other stuff going on, So there's a lot in the world that a lot of people don't take into consideration. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, I love the education. It's fun to hear you talk. I mean, that's exactly why we wanted to have you around. I am going to ask you something that I'm just curious about with you, because for anybody who doesn't know, I think I saw him in the chat earlier, Jay Cow with the Alliance blog. He just did an interview with you, and you guys, it's what loosened me up to even talk to you. I was talking about being intimidated. I was like, well, good God, these guys just talked for like an hour and a half, 2 hours about everything. So now I don't feel like I have to cover all of that. So I feel good. Like I have been steadily directing people back to that interview. It was really, really good. But what's interesting to me, I don't know if we've broken the ice enough, if this is too personal, but I want to ask you this. You in the NWA, I don't know what your history, like growing up, like if you had some kind of connection you felt to it, but if you do, speak on that. But I'm also curious, you also, you mentioned the TNA thing. I wasn't aware of that you kind of like set that in motion. And then you also kind of guided Billy and Dave to where they are right now, as far as picking up the NWA and everything. It sounds like you've had this like off and on again relationship with the NWA where it's like almost been, or has at certain points, like you've been a part of it. And I mean, you are now, but like it was almost like you knew what was best for it and you were trying to take care of it. And then it just feels like sometimes the best thing is you have to give it to someone else or something. Is that frustrating to you? Does what I'm saying make sense?
Well, it does make sense. It's not frustrating. And my story isn't romantic. So that usually like upsets.
I'm trying to pitch a movie to you, Dave.
Well, cool. Let's do it. Sean Astin can play me. So my involvement in the NWA. So I grew up in LA, and we Olympic Auditorium Wrestling was the NWA. Loosely, kind of like Bill Watts was the NWA. So everyone kind of recognized the NWA. We didn't really have WWF here. That didn't happen until like 85, maybe. So, you had the Freddie Blassie stuff and the Guerreros and John Tolis and all the Los Angeles wrestling stuff, Roddy Piper. So I grew up watching it there. Now I didn't get cable. My family didn't get cable, I don't think, until 88. And I was already getting ready to graduate high school and stuff. So like I wasn't even around. I would watch wrestling at my friend's house just because it was on. And they had cable, and I had a cousin who had a satellite, the big C-dish satellites in the backyard. And so we got everything on that, and it was illegal, and like we got crazy channels and like worse than Skinamax stuff. Like, so we would watch all kinds of crazy things on that. But wrestling at 605 would come in, but we'd also see continental wrestling. We'd also see Florida wrestling because it was a satellite, a giant true broadcast satellite. And if you knew the coordinates, how to dial it in, you can watch anything. But the Gordon Soley Georgia Championship Wrestling, I started watching that periodically. And in the beginning, I didn't care for it because it just seemed too hokey to be real. And what I mean by that is, again, I didn't grow up a wrestling fan. I watched it. I wanted to be an animator. I wanted to draw cartoons. So when I looked at pro wrestling, it was like, oh, this is human puppeteering. Okay, it's kind of the same thing. Stories, characters, events, situations. And so you're doing a 7-minute Looney Tunes, or you're doing a 7-minute match. It's virtually the same mentality and philosophy that goes into that. You have the Coyote or the Roadrunner, Elmer Fudd, Bugs Bunny, same comparisons to pro wrestling, and same antics too. So, I'd watch it, and whether it's a Terry Funk or a Dick Murdoch and like chews coming out of their mouth. And granted, I grew up in LA, so I didn't see any of that in real life. So it wasn't real to me. So I'd watch it and it's like, okay, whatever. The most real thing on that show was Gordon Soley. It was like, oh, I could identify with that guy. And then when it became more Crockett, the Crockett's came in and Gordon was off the air. Then the Shivani, Freddie Miller, David Crockett team, it became more WWF-like in the presentation. So it was even more cartoony than trying to be real. Like, we're fighters. I'm gonna attack you at a car and like run you over 6 times. They did more character-driven pieces, and the matches made sense to me after, like in 1984, if you send the Road Warriors in there to go against some job guys, it's like just unbelievably horrible, less than 60-second matches, and they're shoulder tackling people and just manhandling him and throwing him, and then they go and talk somewhat eloquently for like 4 minutes. It's like, this doesn't make sense. This isn't the characters aren't developed. So at any rate, that's my upbringing with wrestling. I never was a wrestling fan. I enjoyed wrestling for the characters, the story, the pageantry, especially the WWF in the 80s. I mean, the pageantry of those shows and what Vince did with Nelson Swagler and then Dick Embersall, and how to create the Academy Awards basically with this grand, vast production value versus the studio show. So like, I didn't have a romance with the studio stuff. I really enjoyed watching a WWF show, like when it went from Championship Wrestling or All-Star Wrestling to Superstars of Wrestling or Wrestling Challenge. Just watch, if you and it's all on the internet. I watched it about a year ago on YouTube, the very last Championship Wrestling show that was done like at the Allentown field house at the fairgrounds, to the first Superstars of Wrestling like at the Hershey Arena. And it's just 1 week apart, and it is so different. And there's cranes, and there's, you know, shoulder cameras, and then the guys are wearing these cool jumpsuits, and the ring is like perfect uniform Disney style, attention to detail. Like, that's what really drew me in. Going back to the NWA was really the Sting, Ric Flair stuff. I watched it, but like when they put Clash of the Champions up against WrestleMania, I was like, whoa, what's this? And, you know, Jim Ross becomes a voice, Gordon Soley returns, Bob Caudle is there. And the presentation to us squaring up, having a fight, having a match was way more believable in like 89, 90, 88, 89, 90 than it was in 82, 83. So I gave it another chance. I'm already in wrestling at that point, working. And it wasn't until the mid 90s when I ended up in Missouri working in television that I had the opportunity to do my own wrestling show. And I started a company called World Legion Wrestling in Springfield, Missouri. And that got me back into the NWA, but not by choice. Gordon Soley had agreed to be my commentator on our local show, and which was awesome. He was virtually in retirement, but I also didn't know at the time he had throat cancer. So he wanted to do one more thing. So I went to a Cauliflower Alley convention, and I met him firsthand there. And since we were in Missouri, I was like, well, we probably need, and granted, I knew nothing about booking necessarily or contacts to wrestlers. I was a TV guy on the TV side of things. And I was freelancing for WWF, and you know, I would go to Memphis and do some Memphis wrestling or whatever it might be in Arkansas or whatever, these little TVs. And Harley comes walking down the hall with 2 24 packs of beer in his hands. He's going back to his seat, probably where he was doing autographs. And I stopped him, and I had met him before, but I know he didn't remember me. I met him before, and I just said to him, hey, Harley, I'm going to do TV in Springfield. He was living in Kansas City. That's where he's from. And I said, you know, I'd like you to come in just as an appearance or something. Maybe we can work something out. And he just pointed, which was funny. He pointed over at Gordon because he knew Gordon was a tough ass. And he goes, if that guy is in, I'll do it. Now, I already had Gordon. He didn't know that. I said, great. The show was on the 15th. How much do you need? We'll see you there, blah, blah, blah. He was so shocked. So he came in and saw what we were doing. And before the show even started, we were part of the NWA because Gordon saw what I was thinking about doing and how the NWA, Howard Brody's NWA and Dennis Carluzzo's NWA could benefit from having a regional show that was shot well. We had a production truck, we had lights, you know, everything looked good. That's one thing I'm proud of. I'm a production guy, so all my stuff has always looked good. And so people recognize that. And so did Gordon. So Gordon said, well, look, you can talk to Howard, figure things out, and you become a member of the NWA, and it will be NWA World Legion Wrestling. All right. So at the time, Missouri was occupied, the territory was occupied by Ed Schumann in Chicago. He had the entire Midwest. So I had to buy it off of him for $500. And so I got the Missouri territory. And so we started running. And that was my reintroduction to it. And I was not a major cog at that time because I really didn't understand how the sanctioning body worked. They were just coming off of being on WWF Raw, the NWA stuff with Cornette and Carluzzo and Howard. And, you know, Jeff Jarrett was the North American champion on there. Dan Severn was the world champion, but he didn't appear with the belt. The new Midnight Express were the tag team champions. They even defended them, I believe, at a WrestleMania. So for the NWA, that was a lot of publicity. And so promoters around the world started joining the company, and Dennis and Howard just had their hands out like, yes, give me. And they kept the money. They didn't put it into the company. So anyhow, that was my reintroduction to the NWA. And when I left Missouri in '99 and sold out the company to Harley, and Harley ran it until his death last year. The company still exists. It's called World League Wrestling now. It's the same company, WLW. You know, I came back to California. I thought I was done with wrestling. I went back to Disney. And then immediately Terry Taylor and Bruce Pritchard got a hold of me and told me to go to UPW, Ultimate Pro Wrestling in Santa Ana, and Rick Bassman. And I became their TV producer. I got out of the promotions part of things. But I was, you know, John Cena had arrived. It was his very first day there. I shot all of his original interviews and directed him and stuff, and on and on and on. So then that leads to the Inoki stuff and how I'm whatever. And then I became a bigger cog in the whole system. Now I'm proud to say that I don't have that much day to day with the current NWA and everything that David has to put up with. I mean, I put up with my own stuff with United Wrestling Network, and it feels real nice to show up at an event where all the responsibility isn't on my shoulder.
That's interesting you say that, but
Ta-da!
I look at you. I look at you as an integral part of it, though, because like you're one of the first faces I think that like interacts with all the people that, you know, show up for Powerrr. You know, especially like people that haven't ever experienced this before. It's like you have this like natural ability to. I don't know. I feel like I'm blowing smoke the whole time here with you, but like it's just like okay. Your interaction with the crowd is you do a great job with like keeping people entertained and like what people expect, and you know, just organizing like the show would not look as good if you weren't there, like making people sit together and that sort of thing. So it's just it's interesting to me. It just like your history obviously in television, I guess, shines through there. But
yeah, well, I'm a TV director.
The fact that you feel like
go ahead, finish that.
Well, I was just going to say, despite the fact that you act like you're not as big of a part of it, it feels like you're a pretty integral.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's like a lot of attention is put on me, and some of it it's due for sure. The little bit of ego I have enjoys that, but you know, David and Billy, they're taking the new risk, you know. From a historical standpoint, come talk to me all you want. The current stuff, I'm a consultant to them. They'll call me if they have a question or they need help with something. Like as an example, Georgia Public Television came through a connection of mine. That's how we ended up in the studio. That's our relationship. They need something, I'll help them out. I'll give it to them. If I need something, you know, I'll call them. They'll help me out. So, but I really want to put more attention on them and be a performer on the show. So, but when you're out there and you're watching me maneuver and move around, like you said, my experience in TV, I'm a director, so I understand where the cameras are placed and I understand why they're there. So if you ever watch the show and like you might see me take a step back or angle myself a certain way, it's because I'm conscious that I'm blocking a camera and there's going to be a close-up of the talent or whatever. So I need to skid out of the way, and I'm kind of wide to begin with. So I have to back up, turn to allow them to get the shot. Or when it's like getting cameras in positions or getting talents to where they're supposed to be, kind of like air traffic control out there or a streetcar conductor, you know, the people watching on video, they don't see all the junk that I'm doing behind the camera to make sure that we get to the next spot. So the interesting part to me is, now that I'm older, and then, you know, medical issues and stuff come into play too. I've had 2 strokes, so I have a short-term memory problem. So that's why, if you notice on that desk, there's so many cards and so many things laid out, because I write everything down, because by the time we leave the meeting, if I didn't write it down, there's a good chance I'll forget it. In fact, I had an episode, medical issue, during the, I think the first pay-per-view, and it was very difficult to get through anything. I was slurring, I was falling over. I remember Billy came out once in between matches. We were in a tape package, and he came up to the lecturer there, and he goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You are laying on the desk." I said, "Oh shit, I didn't realize that." And so it was pretty tough. Afterwards, I went to the back to the EMT. They took my blood pressure and everything, and it was very high. But you know, to get through, I have Lagana in my ear. I have Billy Trask in my ear. And Billy Trask is my protege. I taught him how to direct television wrestling. He directed the Hollywood show for 4 years before Powerrr. So I have all these people.
I've been communicating with him a little bit. I want to get him on here sometime too. He
Billy,
seems like a great guy.
Billy's a great guy. One of the sweetest people you're ever going to meet. Funny. He's a musician. He's an animator himself. He draws. He makes music. He edits. He's a great guy. But yeah, so that's why I try to take myself out of the spotlight, so the people who are doing it now, they get to do, because they're the ones making the financial obligations and the risk. And if me being a part of it can help in the success of what they're doing, I'm way cool with that. I've had my day in the NWA, and you know, I have my own business to run, so it's a good relationship. It's a good partnership. I know how much to push, because trust me, and if David's still on here, he'll either agree or disagree, but you know, I know how much to push for something and when to fall back, because it's at the end of the day, it's their responsibility and their vision for how everything is going to look and sound.
I did have the only thing Dave said recently was I should ask you if you know any magic tricks.
Magic trick. I know how to make a billionaire in wrestling become a millionaire.
Oh. I did have one other quick question I wanted to ask you, and I'm going to let some of these other people talk, and also I'm completely ignoring the chat room and all the questions people are asking in there. So I do want to ask you about the microphone, because I've noticed you do this a few times, and is that legit? Do you have an issue with people touching the microphone when they're at the podium getting interviewed by you? I've seen tell people, like, do not touch this microphone.
Yes, I do. It's a thing. It's a respect thing too. That's my job. Let me do my job. Once an interviewer hands over, whether it's a reporter or whatever, if you hand the microphone over to someone else, you've lost control of it. Like, there's no way of getting that back at all. So that's my job. I'm not in the ring. I'm not getting thrown around. I'm not getting kicked, because I don't do that. I hold a microphone. I ask questions, and I hopefully add value to the interview with my presence and the way that I react and whatnot. But yeah, there's no reason for them to touch it, and two, they don't know how to hold it. There's a way to hold a microphone. You know, a lot of people hold it up here, or people will hold it strangling the thing, like then they hold it to here, and then they scream, and then it's overmodulated in the back. If you watch me do it, you'll notice the distance I hold the microphone from their mouths, because I know the waves coming out of your mouth, you know, and how that'll affect, especially with the volume that they're at, the dB, where it's going to hit, and how in the back it might get distorted, it might this, it might that. That's why I pull away. Even with my ring announcing, I didn't know I was going to be the ring announcer. That's the first time I've ever done this. And I wasn't necessarily a big fan of it, to be very honest with you. And David knows this. I've eased into it now, and I'm okay with it. But You know, when I hear people say all the time, it's like, oh, Dave Marquez has no enthusiasm in announcing. It's like, well, no, that's being a public address announcer. You're just supposed to make an announcement. The person coming out to entertain you should have the color. They should have the personality, not the guy saying their name. As long as you see them and you resonate with the audience, you know, the audience reaction is way better than me doing a fake Howard Finkel impression. So I'd rather just be myself, say their name, just like I'm doing an interview, because that's my character. I'm not an over-the-top type personality in wrestling. I'm a presenter. I'm just like, if I were hosting a game show or a talk show or anything, I'll talk just like this. So there's no reason to throw more into it. The other fun thing about the microphone is I've heard backstage they've nicknamed it the Marquez crank, because apparently I'll crank the microphone into their face, and like they're not used to that, because a lot of these younger guys have never been interviewed by anybody, so they don't know the etiquette of standing with someone with a microphone.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about like all of those details. That's pretty cool, guys. I've been hogging Mr. Marquez here. Did you, Rob, Will, did you have something you wanted to ask him before we jump into the chat?
Hold that question real quick, please. Can you please get my glasses off the desk for me, please? Thank you. Okay. The sun's going down and I can't see you guys. These are prescription and the other ones are too, but go ahead.
Can't hide money. He's got servants over there. He's just like tossing around.
Well, I've Mr. Marquez, it's an honor to meet you. My initial exposure to the current NWA product, you were one of the first faces that I saw in 10 Pounds of Gold, you and Tim Storm. So ever since I started that journey, which honestly wasn't that long ago, I kind of jumped in with both feet, and now I'm here talking to you and various people, and it's a little bit surreal. But one of the conversations that we have frequently on here is about this idea of, you know, anything resembling a return of like territorial wrestling, the territory days, where, you know, there is a true world's champion that goes from promotion to promotion, like in those days. And I would just love, just with your experience with the NWA and other promotions, you know, is that just something that's probably never going to work again in the current landscape, or could you see something like that happening?
Well, with my United Wrestling Network, when I lost the rights to promote the NWA, that's the reason it existed, was to create a cooperative. What I've learned with social media and people having access to Earth, they don't really need a nucleus to tell them what to do. Everyone kind of has their own agenda and their own distribution, their own production, their own this, their own that. And we all use the same talent anyways. So it's, in reality, the territory system exists today. It's just not organized. And this is going to sound like really weird. I have a way different thought process on wrestling than most. Is like, so you have Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Southern California. Northern California, you have APW. Above that, going into the Pacific Northwest, there's Defy. You know, you start going east, there's our Arizona show. I know there's a show in a bigger show in New Mexico, and Texas is full of shows. And then, you know, you go all the way to the East Coast where you might have a CZW or GCW. You have all these Ring of Honor, NWA. You know, all these companies exist. It would be nice, Evolve. It would be nice if we were a little more in cooperation with one another. So not for the sake of our, well, I guess for us too, because it should help with the draw, but to create a talent, a superstar together the old way. But a lot of younger promoters don't understand that, and they don't feel that they need you. They would rather use your resources to try to see how it can help them. But the process is so long that they don't have the time for it. People want to talk about, I mean, look, you guys are on YouTube. I don't know how much money you make or don't, but I know that I've been on YouTube for over a decade and I've never made a penny from the damn thing, you know? So I know, though, in my broadcast that one 30-second commercial across the country is about $3,000, and I have 14 minutes of that. But, you know, people laugh at me because he's on TV. He's on old TV. You know, well, so is American Idol. So is the Super Bowl. and there's a reason for that. So, that's why I don't get involved with the online conversations about, Twitch versus this. Like I saw today that MLW is on they got placement on DAZN, the app. Well, I know DAZN is in some financial troubles, and I look at that deal, and I don't know all the particulars or pretending, but just the stuff that I do know, it's like they're not getting a license for that. AEW isn't getting a license either. They're in a rev share with advertising. So it's like the public likes to create these fantasy romantic ideas around pro wrestling. The only one who's doing it right, quote unquote, right, and all the lines of revenue and everything of being a corporation is the WWE.
Yeah, and I'll say, if we're making any money off YouTube, Gary's not sharing it, because I haven't seen that.
We're gonna move past this question. Rob, did you have something?
You're getting a little antsy over there, bud.
We've heard rumblings about the money we're making here. Will and I are like, man, come on now, Gary. I'm drinking this table vodka here, and you're over there sipping on craft beer.
Yeah, nothing like that YouTube money.
Right. Well, Mr. Marquez, again, I mean, I know you're very humble. There's been a tradition in wrestling to honor the voices, and particularly in the NWA, and you're up there, especially now. But you're up there with Gordon Soley and Bob Caudle and Lance Russell and those guys, and we venerate you. And I mean, I'm as thrilled to see you tonight as I have been with any guest that we've had on here. We've had some doozies on here, but I've had two questions. One, what's in your glass over there? It's always clear. I'm assuming it's either
just water
or a very.
It's just water.
Okay. Is that
last
is
night?
that a
It was a different
water?
story. It is. It's Perrier.
Nice. Of course it is.
When I was a kid, I wouldn't touch Perrier. Now.
At first, I thought you were wearing a linen shirt there, soaking in the sun, and I'm like, well, there's a pattern on here.
No, I'm too fat for that. I'm not cool like that. only Southern fat people like linen.
My
this
real
is
question,
Van Heusen cotton, right out of the catalog.
Nice. We got into this discussion the other night about Ric Flair and the Dominican and the potential for, Tim Storm had been talked. They made an offer to him to drop the belt in Japan, and we got into the question about the old habit back in the days of champions putting escrows on the belt, putting deposits. And I remember that either the first or second, I think it was the first episode of 10 Pounds of Gold, when you present the belt to Tim Storm. And I was curious. I know that belt, even though it's the belt, there's still some minor, changes in it. You have the new modern Canadian flag as opposed to the classic one and all that.
That was me. I did that.
I was going to ask you that. That was my question. Like, so tell me about the process of what you went into producing this a beautiful trophy, and the pain it must have been to change that flag, because that has been so standard for so many years. And I know many people might not care about that, but for nerds like the three of us, that's fascinating conversation.
It was just time. I mean, it was the proper flag. But the belt that we're using now, is not the original championship belt that the Maple Leaf appeared on first. That championship was stolen, and it is in the possession of somebody else now. But when I went to the board of directors, I was on the board of directors, but when I went to Bob, I said to him, look, let's make a new belt. Let's make it for HD television, and let's fix that flag. Now, we had three Canadian promoters in Quebec, Winnipeg, and Vancouver. And the interesting part of it was, I think the only guy who was for the change was the guy from Vancouver. The other two didn't want to change it. The NWA was very red state, blue state when I was in it. And there were not many blue states. It was me and maybe three others. So I was always the guy to kind of ruffle feathers and make suggestions. And that was one of them. I just went to the meeting. I said, guys, it's just the right thing to do. I said, do you see that on the Olympics? Do you see that during hockey? Do you see that during basketball? Do you see that when they go to Toronto to play baseball? No, this is the proper flag, and it needs to be changed. And then the placement of it, they wanted me to move it to the back, the second plate. So when it went around the waist, you couldn't see it. And then of course I tell Ed Schumann, I was like, put that damn thing right there next to the American flag. Just stick it there. Because I was paying for it. I was like, well, I'm paying for this damn thing, do it. So we bought a new belt, that was it. The new one, this newer one, I believe was made by a fellow named Peter in England. And it's a very pretty belt. It's bigger too. It's wider. It's more beveled. The globe is very pronounced. It's probably the best looking globe that I've ever seen on a NWA world title. The ones that we were using previously to that were made by Dave Milliken and Rico Mann and Reggie Parks and Ed Schumann, who was their partner in that business at Midwest Belts. And that's who made the new one. They also made the one that Pearce now has at home. That was the one that was used on TNA. And then they made the new one that got stolen. And then we made one in between that was horrible. Adam did the design on it, and it was made by this guy named Troy Lowe, who's not my favorite person in Knoxville, Tennessee. But it was a horrible design. I had nothing to do with it, nothing to say with it. It just looked like a Color Forms belt. Like they just slapped things on it. And that belt was called the All-Star belt, I believe, or Universal belt or something, the name of the company that made it. And then when it happened, so when the new belt showed up, that was an interim belt. So when the new one showed up from Reggie and those guys that was stolen, Adam had the one before. So when the belt was stolen, we got Adam's belt back. And then the whole thing disappeared. And they pretended they left the thing in Australia, and the new ownership group had to go get it. But Adam took the belt home, and that's how you guys end up with the championship belt we have now.
Now, do the champs, do they put down escrows on or deposits, or do they retain them? Would Tim Storm have had the option to drop the belt in Japan? I mean, would that have even been a possibility, and then pick it up 2 days later?
It's always a possibility if you're watching Carnyland. If someone offered him $50,000, and if he was the right person, I'm sure he would have taken that $50,000 and just went on his way. But he's a good man, and he didn't do it. There are no deposits put on the belts anymore. I wish there were, because then I could have done what I needed to do to get the belts back. But we didn't have that. Why? Because no one has money.
Right.
But
I always
yeah,
thought it was interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dave.
No, go ahead.
Well, no, it's kind of unrelated, but I was just thinking about, the times luckily, one of the beautiful parts about NWA is I've gotten to see championship wrestling from Hollywood, because I kind of got introduced to that. But you have Nick Aldis like hanging up like with the NWA title and stuff like in the studio there. And I just thought that was interesting. Like, I don't know. Is it just because you like have such a good relationship, or just a respect for the NWA thing, or like what leads to something like that?
Sure. Well, I mean, David and I are great friends, and I knew Billy just off a couple of times. I met him at Cauliflower Alley and different get-togethers. But I'm very close to David. And when this was going down, they needed footage, they needed a location, and I had it. And it wasn't just a selfish thing for me to be back in the organization or have the 3 letters wrapped around me. I knew that it was never going to be NWA Championship Wrestling from Hollywood again. That I knew. And I also didn't want that either, because they had their idea, and my train was already going. So it just didn't make sense. But in order to create special attractions on my program, and the history of the championship and how many years it was on our show, and our fan base knows what it is, it just made sense to me to feature the world championship on the show. Also, the United Wrestling Network doesn't have a world title, so it just didn't We have a television title, and we have a local heritage title, we call it, and we have tag team championships, but we don't have a world singles title. So I thought it was a great addition to the show and something special as a special attraction. And two, the NWA at the time, they needed a location to shoot stuff. So I was all for it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
David, you're obviously being very generous with your time, and so whenever you've got to go, just let us know, and we'll release you.
It's cool. I got nothing going on. They're recording stuff in there. At my house, I have two homes here, so it's my office too. So they're doing production. So Championship Wrestling from Hollywood's over there, and Championship Wrestling from Arizona's over here. Then there's edit bays, and there's recording booths, and there's green screens in the living room. And if you see Peter Avalon,
sounds like my house.
Yeah, if you see Peter Avalon ever doing anything for the Young Bucks podcast show, the Elite show, and it's in a backyard, or if it's in a green screen, that's done here. Peter lives in this house, so
oh, nice.
He's my tenant. So is Billy. Billy lives in this house too when he's here. Right now he's in Vermont with his mom. But yeah. So I lost track of the question. What was the question?
No, it's okay. I was just letting just don't you're
the
your old
recording.
man. I just wanted to be like, don't feel obligated to talk to us.
No. They're recording in there, so I mean, I'd just be sitting there crying because Mad Men is leaving Netflix tonight, and that's my pacifier is Mad Men. I think it's the greatest.
Smoking a lot less and drinking less whiskey than I'd expect. Then. What's
that?
I said you're smoking less cigarettes and drinking less whiskey than I expected. Then.
I smoke a lot of cigars back here, and I drink an awful lot of old fashions. So
there you go.
Probably.
Marquez, do you drink you ever had a Sazerac before?
A what?
A Sazerac. It's related to the old fashioned, but it's with an absinthe wash.
No, I haven't. I've heard of it, but I haven't. I'd enjoy tasting it, but no. So either a Manhattan or same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, people who are like devoted to old fashioned. There are whole Sazerac societies, and they're obsessed with old fashions. So it's like this. You need to get you one. They're nice.
I'll enjoy it. I will be more than happy to down one with you, or four
absolutely.
or five.
We'll do it.
No, I'm an incredible drinker.
There you go. All right, I feel better then. Let me ask you. We've got some questions in the chat, and I've been ignoring these people, so I'm going to give them some credit here. They're asking stuff. WWE Front Row says. Related to sort of what we were just kind of on, I think this connects a little bit. How did you feel when NWA Powerrr debuted on YouTube and seemed to have this overwhelmingly positive reception in the wrestling community? Did that feel good? Did you expect that? Like, what were your thoughts at that time?
I expected it to be a success, yes, because I know, again, the NWA can do no wrong for certain people. I knew the audience was going to be there. And I had already seen the show, so I knew that people were going to take to it like crazy. And, fans today don't do any research. They have YouTube at their fingers and Wikipedia and everything, but no one will ever necessarily go and do any research to see what's what. When it was heralded as the return of studio wrestling, which is probably where the origin of this question comes from. And I had been doing studio wrestling for 20 years prior to this, it didn't upset me at all. It just proves that my method of doing things worked, and they just happened to be the outlet. My show, again, I don't like releasing numbers, but I'm on 132 TV stations across the country. I have a deal with the ABC Disney stations, owned and operated. So if you ever see an ABC in a circle and a 7 usually, or Channel 13 in Houston, I don't know what cities you guys are in, but we're on 3 of their channels. When hopefully by the end of next year, we'll be on all 9 of them. And that includes Channel 7 New York, Channel 7 Los Angeles, Channel 7 Chicago. But currently with our 130 plus TV stations, I get about 375,000 viewers a week. My show is highly successful. It's just the internet doesn't talk about it, and I don't care if they do.
Yeah.
I'm not about press clippings. I'm not about seeing my name somewhere. I can care less if I have a 5-star match to the internet on my show. Zicky Dice was on my show 2 years before he was on Powerrr, doing the same thing. I'm just happy he got on a platform where that audience embraced him and was like, yeah, this is really cool. I mean, he was embraced on my show, but on this program, it was a different phenomenon. So it was like, awesome, great, cool. But no, I knew it was going to be a success.
I'm a big fan of Royce Isaacs, and I went to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood a lot to watch like more Royce Isaacs. Like once I found out who he was, like that was one of the first things that led me in that direction. I just dig him, and so you've got a knack for picking up some people over there.
I've been pretty successful,
Okay.
Not just to toot my horn, but you wouldn't have Finn Balor here. You wouldn't have Carl Anderson. You wouldn't have an awful lot of talents that are in WWE, AEW, Ring of Honor, whatever, if it wasn't for me. I'm a very good scout. I know how to pick good people.
That's awesome. So I got a question here about, do you have a favorite NWA champion, like an all-timer that's your guy?
I mean, I'd lie if I didn't say Adam Pearce, because, I mean, he and I are going to be like Ric Flair and Crockett forever. People who actually will go and do the history and see who's connected to who. I mean, I made more money with Blue Demon Jr. than any of them. We had to deal with Coca-Cola because of him, and Full Throttle energy drink. So I love him for a different reason. Harley Race, of course, I feel is the very first television era, late 60s, 1970s television wrestler. So, and not only was I in business with him, he was my business partner and all that. It's just going back, looking at everything. Harley is the definition of the NWA World Title. And then Adam is of the same mold, if you ask me. Brent Albright it was a short run, but he was a great champion. But I got to kind of put all the guys in my time controlling, or having, I shouldn't say controlling because people get upset over that, influence in making new champions. During my time, it was Pierce, Cabana, Blue Demon, Brent Albright. I had nothing to do with making the Sheik champion, zero. I fought against it, and all of my thoughts came true, reality. And then during the TNA time, I was there, kind of approved with the organization to put the title on Rhino and to put the title on Raven, I think, and AJ in the beginning, and Ron Killings. So that was, it's all fun times. You can't, but I did more with Adam than anybody. Adam and I were together from 2000 to 14, I think, when he went to WWE, 14, 15. So we were together a long time.
Right, you had Blue Demon that had that real lengthy historic title run. It's up there 500 days or more. But it's like every once or twice in a generation, you have a guy that just carries that weight, that authority. And Adam Pearce is one of those. He reminds me of in that same vein as a Luthez or a Ric Flair or now a Nick Aldis. He just there's something about his composure, his dignity, the respect he paid to the title. I think he really sustained the company. He's one of my 3 favorite NWA champs of all time, and I always get weird looks when I say that. But I think Jay Cow's in the chat. He'll tell you, man, Adam Pearce is indispensable to the history of the NWA, and I love hearing you say that.
Adam did everything. He wanted to be the NWA World Champion. In fact, when he became the booker at Ring of Honor, it was because he was the NWA World Champion. We had enough relationship with Kerry Silkin that we switched the belt in New York at a big Ring of Honor show. some of the people in the company, they stuck it as the popcorn right after the intermission. Like, nobody cares. No one wanted to see it. And it was like this lull. But Adam defended the NWA title in Ring of Honor over a dozen times, mostly against Nigel McGuinness, title versus title in different towns, with dusty finishes and rule books and all kinds of goofy things that would happen. But, you know, when we were in New York and we did the switch there, and then the explosion when Brent won the title, like, people were backstage weren't necessarily happy about that. But Kerry was.
Right.
So that's all that really mattered.
Regarding like the respect to the belt, did you have a reaction at all to the Shane Douglas incident? And then I'd be curious to know if you know who stole the belt.
I know exactly who stole the belt, and I mentioned his name just a little while ago. The Shane Douglas thing is about the time when I was getting.
It was Peter Avalon.
No, Peter he's stealing people's library cards and bookmarks.
Okay.
And no, the Sheik stole it. He has it. It's public. Everybody knows the story. So for the most part, I think everybody knows it. But he has it in Huntington Beach, California, from what I understand. But yeah, so he has that, and that's that.
Forgive me, because maybe this is the part I'm uneducated on. This is not the Sheik. The reason I'm asking this is this relates to a question that's in the chat room, actually. We had a show not too long ago, Rob and I did, where we talked to Brian Solomon, who's a contributor for PWI.
Yep.
And it happened shortly after they announced that they recognized, like, the WWE, like the Raw and SmackDown titles and the AEW title as world championships.
Yep.
Yeah. And maybe like New Japan, I think, like the IWGP. But so we, of course, went in on them because we're like, oh, well, what about the NWA title? So we had a fun show going into that. So I have two questions. One is, he is doing a book now. He wrote Pro Wrestling FAQ, and he's written some stuff, but he's doing a book on the Sheik. Is this the same Sheik?
No, that's the original.
That's the OG Sheik.
And I know Brian.
Okay.
So no, that's the Detroit Sheik. This is Joe Cabibo, who runs a promotion here in Southern California.
Okay, gotcha. All right, sorry. And then the other question is we did get the question in the chat about that discussion we had. Somebody in the chat wanted to know how you felt about that, like what you think about, like, PWI having an opinion on what's a world title, and if you felt like there's anything to that.
It doesn't matter. I mean, in reality, it doesn't matter. Stu Stacks has retired, who was the person who created that situation. I fought with Stu a lot over that while I had the title for the organization, because he was always bugging me. He's like, hey, send me rankings. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. Why don't you recognize the world title? Oh, but the PWI, the NWA, it should really be in there. I was like, yeah, so should the world title. And their criteria for being a world title, I don't know if Brian said this or not, is you have to have television. I had television. TNA had television.
He did hint to us that he thought that was Brian's obviously just a contributor, not to knock him, I mean, but he was not like on the decision making part of it. He talked to them as he came onto the show, but he did mention that he thought that went in based on what he could gather from them, that had a lot to do with the decision-making process was TV.
100%. And Stu, I like him a lot. We're colleagues and whatnot, but like, he had a very older way of thinking about things, and now he's retired, and we'll see if things change, but they were late to the internet, worse than me. They didn't change their formats. They're very traditional in what they presented. And that was Stu, and now Stu's gone. So hopefully, maybe there'll be some changes, and it's really great. The magazine's still around for sure, because it's fun to see you in a magazine that you grew up reading. I remember Stu did on Adam. He did like a 5-page color whole thing on us and the return of the NWA and all that, but he didn't call it a world title.
Right, and I mean, I like the PWI. I spent all my allowance on it growing up and everything, and I know back in the day it was more comical and all that. Now they've tried to make themselves more of a serious magazine of journalism with some critical argumentation going on and all that. I got this latest issue, and Brian Solomon, who I like, and he's been an advocate for the NWA, but
Yeah.
I was very optimistic reading it because they had a story about Marty Skrull in there, and I'm like, man, this is great. Nick, all this is discussed. Then I get to the back and look at the rankings, and it's like so arbitrary. And that wouldn't bother me. You're right; it doesn't matter, except for the fact that that so many people read it. But you got like Nick Aldis ranked number 10, below Tessa Blanchard and Jake Hager, who Aldis defeated during the Crusade. And I'm like, man, there's no rhyme or reason to this. And going back to what Gary's point about television, we're like, well, I mean, New Japan has limited television in certain regions of the world, but it's virtually unseen here. And YouTube is the biggest platform in the world. That should count. The times have changed, you know. But anyway, those are the kind of thoughts that run through my head with that. As far as PWI, I really like PWI. I wish it would be more credible, you know.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's their toy. They can do what they want with it. It's like when people complain about Facebook and Facebook rules and like they're going to take your post down or censor it. Well, it's their platform. They're letting you use it. So you just go along with it. As long as you can use the magazines for some promotional advantage or get something out of it, cool. I'm pretty black and white about that stuff. Again, there's no romance with me when it comes to it's either this is what we need it for, that's what we need it for, and that's it.
Yeah. Do you have an all-time favorite announced team? I'm seeing that one pop up in the chat.
Yeah, I think, and this is going to be unpopular with a lot of people, I think Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura was probably the best wrestling broadcast team. Bobby and Grill is great for sure. David Crockett is the absolute worst. The AWA announcers, I really never cared for them. But Vince and Jesse knew how to sell and get you into what you needed to know. They gave you all the right information. They put the right inflections. They had Vince was writing the thing, so he knew what he needed to say and what he needed to get over. But in pro wrestling, I'd say it was Jesse Ventura and Vince McMahon.
I want to ask you something for myself too. You probably don't even remember this conversation, but when we were, I saw a question in the chat, so you can hit on this if you want to. We got the question about if there was kind of a who's your favorite wrestler kind of thing. I think basically we're asking like who you would sign for like championship wrestling from Hollywood if you could. But I'm curious also to go into that a little further. You were talking to me and a couple other people. I think Trevor Murdoch was in the conversation. Yeah, I'm just hanging out with celebs, but I asked you about a certain person. I won't even name names in like championship wrestling from Hollywood, and you complimented them, but you also talked a little bit about sometimes you felt like there are people that get so far into the business and they get into this like. I don't know if I'm trying to remember your exact words, but you described it as a comfort zone almost, like that they wouldn't go where they needed to go to get better. And it was disappointing to you to see that. I was wondering if can you elaborate on that a little bit on what you're talking about exactly? And like, I mean, is that like a common thing you see, or, I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, it's an epidemic. Being a wrestler today is not like being a wrestler even 8 years ago, 7 years ago. With social media, talents don't necessarily feel that they need a promoter to promote them. They promote themselves. So when you're trying to help someone with a character, or you have, especially with us with television, we have an angle, a story that we're trying to tell, some younger talent, the newer generation, they just don't even like to go with it because they don't understand why we're doing it and why does it take so long to do it and whatnot. And in order to get better, you have to move around and go places and work with other people. As an example, my first television job was in Missouri, and I'm from Los Angeles, and I went there and saw their basic setups in the Midwest and these smaller TV markets and saw how they made wonderful looking television with the most minimal equipment. And that allowed me to move from Springfield, Missouri to Waterloo, Iowa, to St. Louis, to Atlanta, to New York, to Chicago, then come back to LA and work in broadcasting because I put my time in. It's much like being the territorial wrestler where you went around and worked with all the greats. And I did that. There are unknown names in broadcasting because news directors or producers or camera operators or whatever in local towns, you see their name go up on a Friday real quick. You have no idea who they are, what they are, why they are. But it's the same thing, just like job guys or the George Souths of the world, when you're learning from someone fantastic, but they might not have a giant name. So to me, people should move around. And since their comfort at home, I call it the magic fridge. I don't kill on people for living with their folks. I think as long as they let you do it and the situation's cool and it's mutual for everybody, great. But get out of that comfort zone. Figure out how to, when you do open that refrigerator, something might not be in it. At home, there's always something in it, always. So you have to leave the nest. You have to get out there. You have to move. I have a hell of a time here in Southern California getting people to drive 40 miles. And I used to, and I'm not even a wrestler. I used to have to drive for wrestling to work the TBS shows or something, Missouri, Springfield, Missouri to Tunica, Mississippi, or Memphis, or drive all the way through Texas, Oklahoma, Georgia, Charlotte, and Columbus, Ohio. Like, I would have to do that as a producer or a camera operator or whatever. I wasn't even a talent. And I try to talk to these guys about it, and they just kind of like, well, that was you. This is how we do it. I have an OnlyFans. I have a Patreon. I don't need to do that. So it's
how does that
now.
work for you? How does that work for you though? Like, I mean, as far as like you are in the business that you're in and you're running promotions, I mean, are you saying like you sometimes think these people should break away from you and go somewhere else, or like would you
1000%? Because
okay.
And again, I don't want ego to play here, but I like them to go somewhere else because then they know how good they have it here.
Okay. It's interesting to me. Yeah, I was curious about that. I've been thinking about it ever since then because I was like, well, he's got places. So like, but it didn't sound like you were talking about like, hey, don't go to Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, go to Arizona. Like you seemed like you were like, hey, you should go find out some other places.
Go to Europe, go to Africa, go to Chile. Like Americans
does not like Chile. Shouldn't have brought it up.
No. Hey. Now we're wasting time. Sport. Yeah, relax. What was I saying? That's the short attention span thing. What was I saying?
No, it's okay. I mean, you were just talking about going to these other places like Africa and Chile and all
right.
of that stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. You have to go out and do things and meet other people. Americans are like the only people who don't own passports on Earth. We don't. You don't go anywhere. Depends on where you are in the country. If you're going to take a vacation, a family, you might save up, go to Disney World. You might go camping throughout vacation times. If you're in the South, you might go to Myrtle Beach or Hilton Head or one of those resort type areas. Here in California, I live in paradise. During certain times of the year, I can go surfing if I want to, and I can ski in the snow within 2.5 hours of each other. So I live in a vacation. The temperature is virtually right year round. So Americans don't have a mentality like the rest of Earth to go and do things. We sit here, we live in our little bubble, and it's give me, give me, give me. The international talents I deal with, always, they will rob a bank to go somewhere and get the money to go somewhere else and live in a closet somewhere for three months while their visitor's visa is good. And they will drive everywhere and they will eat shit sandwiches and enjoy it with a gigantic smile. Americans, Not at all. It's selfish.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, now that I delivered the downer, you guys jump in.
That's not a downer. No, that's real. No, you got to be real. Like, that's the thing about wrestling. And like, that's why I like Carnyland, is because, you know, the show is fun because it's real. Those situations you're watching, probably 80% of the time, that's something that's happened. So, you know, we're in this odd, you can't make this up situation, even though it's nothing but a phony made up industry. But the real lives behind the make-believe is more sensational and over the top than the real life. So you have to be real with people, especially when they're put on pedestals and they're worshipped from a fan base and from promoters and, you know, all that stuff. Sometimes it's merited, sometimes it isn't.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this. This is an education for me. So all of those places, I'm curious too, though, you ran a show, for all these places, it seems like you do in the West, but in a little while back, you ran the Phillips Arena. That was like 12 years ago. I say a little while back, the NWA, and you like booked and promoted that whole show. Like how did that come about? Like, what's the story there? That was in Atlanta. So
I had an agent. Well, I mean, I ran shows around the world. We did them in Australia. We did them in Europe. We did them in Canada. Did them in Mexico. We did them everywhere as the NWA,
right.
And in arenas, drawing thousands of people. I still have him today, a booking agent named Chris McNeil. He used to represent Def Comedy Jam Tour and the Amazing Kreskin, the Paranormalist, Jay Leno. And so he books these talent to casinos or whatever. And we were in, you might have heard the term, the sold show business, where you sell the show to a venue or a carnival or whatever. And like the Phillips Arena show, I'm not going to lie to you, I got paid $85,000 to do that show. That show cost me about $14,000 to produce. So that was my profit, the back end of that.
That's almost as much as I make on this show.
You're doing damn good. And then we usually would do shows exactly like that with those same budgets on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we do that 3 times a weekend. Like, I was doing that all over the world. So that's why I said, you know, I made lots of money in the NWA because of doing that. A lot of other people resented me doing that, you know, because I was invading their territory. It's like, no, man, I'm putting your guys on a bigger show with bigger talent. They have to work with them. You're still the NWA, as David would say, Lagana, the NWA Italian Missouri champion, you know, state champion. You're still that. You're still defending the title in your area, and your guy is still going over. But now he's going over on Viscera, not, you know, jobber number 3. He's in there, and he's getting good footage, and he's in there with a credible talent, you know. So those are I hate calling it politics because it's not politics. It's just bullshit.
Yeah. Your culture talk and worldwide travel brought in the ladies, because I'm seeing Natalia in the chat is now asking, can you tell us the best place in the world you ever worked culture-wise?
Culture-wise? I mean, the Australians at the time didn't have much wrestling when we did our shows there. Most places love what we do. It's even in the States, like on the West Coast, where I'm at, it's the worst. This is the absolute worst area for fans. The Midwest, the South, Mid-Atlantic area, New York too, great fans. But West Coast fans, they're just not. It's not that. They want to be super smart. They want to be the show. They want to hijack the show more than anywhere in the country, really, out here. And like the hybrid of wrestling that's in the West, it's a lucha spotty type of wrestling that's out here. PWG style, if you want to call it that.
Right.
That became a term for a while. And AEW kind of has that because the people who are running that are from out here. So it's, there's a lot of influence. When I came back here in '99 after being with Harley Race for a few years, I was shocked at how much wrestling was in the decline in '99 when I came back to California. It was never anything special, mind you. People really never talked about California wrestling as the big thing. What we were doing at the Inoki Dojo and PWG, that really brought eyes to at least Southern California. But the wrestling wasn't, everyone kind of looked like they were wearing pajamas or they looked like Power Rangers. And like, it just wasn't what I knew wrestling to be. So to answer the question, there's lots of places, but the West Coast is the worst.
It was really interesting. We were talking about Australia. We saw we were trying to give some props to Jay Cal over at the Alliance blog, who's been obviously doing things for a while now for the NWA, and we would look for his earliest press release, and it was about an Australian show, and it was super weird because like the week we talked about it, we covered like Daniel Bryan versus X-Pac, and like in Australia in Perth, yeah, and that was you, and you guys posted about it, the United Wrestling Network, and I just thought that was super interesting. Like in the same week that happened, and you guys had footage of it and everything. It was awesome.
Yeah,
that's not really a question so much. It's just like we I'm just talking about it.
Yeah, cool. No, it's cool, man. It's I've had a fun ride. 30 years of doing this is a long time, and I'll be 47 this year. So I've been doing it a very long time. I'm tired, but I've achieved most everything that I think I wanted to do in wrestling. My biggest thing now is being an advocate or a teacher and trying to teach young people how to succeed in wrestling and understand what they're saying of why they want to be in wrestling. If people tell me, because I always ask one question when I meet people for the first time, whether they've been working a while or not, I always say, so why are you doing this? And their answer 90+% of the time is because I liked this when I was a kid. And I usually follow up with, do you still eat glue? There's no reason to be in wrestling other than the fact that you want to make money and get a job in wrestling. But that's lost because there is no money in wrestling for the most part, anything substantial, unless you're with a big company.
Natalia followed up the question about the folks here. I'm just seeing this, so I wanted to mention it. She's curious about like what your ideal, like what's your idea of an ideal fan? You were describing like how some of the fans are different.
Yeah.
But
to me, the ideal fan is someone who genuinely wants to be there, no matter what you're putting in there. Don't question the booking. Don't talk about how a character has this, or don't rag on the show. Don't do obnoxious chants to entertain you and the three people around you because you're bored. If you're bored, why are you there? Leave. We don't want you there. Just to be honest, most promoters, we don't want you there. I have given money back to people so they can leave. I kick people out of my show all the time. Like if there's unruly people, I stop the show and I said, we're not going to start unless those people leave. It's the truth. For years I've done that. And it's not just in wrestling, it's everywhere, especially with the internet too, because people are more vocal and they have an outlet and they can express their thoughts or whatever. When I was with Disney, and annual passes became a thing. They went from seasonal passes to annual passes. And then you see the ownership that an annual pass holder has over the theme park and how they feel that they pay whatever it is now, $1,000 a year, let's say, or whatever. They feel they can hold that over the business, the company, and like they pay your salary. It's like, no, You like to come to Disneyland. Awesome. You like churros. Dope. Like, come enjoy that. Don't come and talk about, man, that paint's really chipped over there. That rim light, you know, there's 960 of them, but there's 2 of them that are out. And that's not Disney. So it's like the nitpicking of things and pointing out what's the obvious. If people don't feel that promoters don't know what's wrong with their shows, they're wrong. We know everything that's wrong with our programming. And the same thing, like Jim Ross said not that long ago on his podcast when he was rebutting back to Jimmy Cornette about AEW. You know, JR said, you know, we know everything Cornette said was correct, but we know that, and we're trying to fix it. You know, it's not just you have a bucket of money and talent, and it's just, you know, and it's going to be 1986 Mid-South. It's just not going to happen because the mentality is different. The ideal is different. The presentation is different.
I wonder at what point does like fan criticism become appropriate for the product though? Because I'm a father and I've loved the NWA my whole life, and I've always felt like one, and we say this all the time on the show. I feel like pro wrestling is high culture. It's not trashy entertainment. It's very refined. It draws in characteristics of many different forms of entertainment, from theater to drama to dance to acting to all that. But I feel like I want it to be palatable for my whole family, you know. So I feel like going back to like the Attitude Era, that's a black mark for me on wrestling history. And I wonder, like, when and the NWA is very, very family friendly. It's very clean. It's something that I enjoy my whole family participating in. But like when somebody gets out there on the mic and starts to use vulgar language, do they get talked to backstage and say, hey guys, you know, we got it, kind of like the fans do? You know?
Yeah. Nothing you see on television, no matter what company is ad-libbed. Everyone has permission to say everything that's being said out there at that time. I don't care what show it is. The CM Punk pipe bomb interview, whatever they call, that was all scripted.
Right.
Like
So
everything that's said. So if they're cursing, we know they're going to curse, and we went over it already.
So just an example, we were at the very last Powerrr tapings. I remember in particular, I remember Latimer coming out and doing an interview, and I love Tom Latimer, so don't take this the wrong way. I'm not trying to criticize him, but he came out and it was like curse word after curse word, but none of that appeared on Powerrr.
Well, that's because David censored it.
Right.
Yeah, but we knew he was going to go out there and be aggressive and say what he has to say.
But there's never a time when their coaches say, hey guys, you know, we know that we're going to allow you to have some creative license out there, but you know, remember that we're selling this product to families and kids and stuff like that.
Well, we're selling it. We're selling it to everyone. Like even going back to Disney and Disney parks, like about 10 years ago, they changed their facial hair policy that finally you could have a mustache or a beard. You still can't have visible tattoos though, you know?
Right.
Yeah. There's an image, but then there's also the character and the individual being believable as a man. So if you're going to be in a fight and you're ready to do what you need to do in that fight, it's in the streets, that's what you're going to hear. So you need to make it as believable as possible.
Sure, but I think he was talking to Joe Galley when he said all that. And
yeah, but was it about Camille?
Camille, and he said Gigi and stuff. But then another thing I think is like
that's his girlfriend. So
right.
He's upset.
I think you know, like when you know, it's like people the credulity of things, like the believability of things. So like I'm thinking of like an MJF, who for me, I think MJF is one of the great talents, but he does this stuff that's like, it's like over the top, like trying to overdo the heel. It's just like I think about the autograph signing where he flipped the little kid off, and I'm thinking if I'm that kid's dad, I would have, MJF would have broke kayfabe that day because we'd have been in a fight over that, because that's highly inappropriate for any audience. You don't flip the kid off.
I personally, I agreed with what he did because that's what he's doing, and he was told to do that. That's his character. Part of what's wrong with wrestling is everyone is too approachable. You can't. What made wrestling special when you were a kid was because these characters, these men, were who they are 24 hours a day. Today, the last 15 years, that went away. The character, when you clock out, the character's done. So when Ric Flair had tax issues, let's say, or medical issues, people were like shocked because, you know, he was this wheeling dealing guy in shoes and suits. Well, yeah, that's why he has tax problems. He spent all that money there. He didn't pay his taxes, you know, but you don't want to get into the real world. Hulk Hogan says the N-word, you know, that's holy hell. What just happened? You know, Hulk Hogan said that. Right. Even Hollywood Hogan said that. Yeah, he's a human, you know, but he was out of character because today you turn it off when you get out of when work's over, you turn it off. And it's not like it used to be. Like I've seen Roddy Piper, much like an MJF. I've stood with Roddy Piper and I've seen Piper be so Roddy Piper in real life and punch people, and Harley too. I watched Harley start fights in bars and all these places just because he could. Yeah. He was in character.
And those guys bear the penalty for that too. But I just think and I'm just trying to press you just because I respect your opinion.
Yeah.
Especially in this day and age where in the social climate that we live in, is there a line that's crossed though? You know, for me, like there's not a far leap from a grown man flipping off a 4-year-old kid to someone coming out and his gimmick is he's a pedophile or a racist. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't accept that as being palatable. People would lose their jobs over that.
Yes and no. Look, if you're watching, you have to look at it as entertainment first and foremost. So if someone's playing a racist, as an example, if you're watching a TV show, Archie Bunker, a bigot, right? Carol O'Connor was the biggest liberal there ever existed, but he played the greatest conservative bigot in the history of television. It's what you allow yourself, and it's individual. If you're going into a situation knowing what environment you're in, and prior to 10, 15 years ago, when you're in a pro wrestling environment, I mean, I've seen Adam Pearce do crazy things to fans. He's punched people just sitting there. I've watched it. I was the promoter. I had to deal with it, you know. But that adds to the mystique of the individual. And so that experience, much like, and you may or may not agree with this, but much like taking a photo with Mickey Mouse at a Disney park, you know, MJF flipping off a kid, that's something that kid is always going to remember. Always. And that's the character. That. And that's the character that MJF is probably going to play throughout his entire career, much like a Roddy Piper or a Ric Flair. They played that same character for 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Very good. We're sitting, this is a college course that people should be paying $3,000 for right now, Mr. Marquez.
Well, my PayPal is info@hollywoodwrestling.com. Send it friends and family, and I'll even send you a pin.
Yeah, Rob, you're talking a lot about with this attitude of being above everything with MJF flipping off people, but WWE Front Row in the chat pointed out that we did also start "Stab 'em up" chant in the NWA Powerrr crowd.
We were shut down for that, and we did not. My family did not engage in that. I would not tolerate that in my household. So,
yeah. That one got me, by the way, in the Powerrr tapings. I was like, I remember looking at my wife and being like, wow, you know, I'm no prude, but that was like, that seems weird. They're like chanting for these people to stab them. And, but you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm cool with it. You know, if it helps engage the audience and if it creates the reaction we want in the arena, in front of the cameras. And if Max comes out because at an autograph session and the internet gets upset in that town where it happened after, and the moment he walks out and people see him, they start booing and hating him. That's what they're supposed to do.
Right. I guess it seems to me like one of the things that really sets the NWA and its related organizations apart from everybody else is like it doesn't insult intelligence. It really presents itself as legitimate competition sports. And so there's certainly, like in baseball, we're huge baseball fans in our household. We love the Atlanta Braves, but I've always loved Barry Bonds. I think he's one of the greatest players of all time. But he would be considered a classic heel. He doesn't like the media. He doesn't talk. But you're never going to see him out there flipping off a kid. I mean, he's not going to do that. And
Well,
to me,
you
like
don't know that.
if he did, it would be on every
back
headline of every newspaper.
Back when Barry Bonds was around, there weren't camera phones. So
that's true. That's true. But you
look how long it took us to find out about the syringes.
But that's just it, though. Those are things that are done in the shadows. It's one thing to say that human nature has not changed. I mean, I think people have always had their secrets and all that, but the things that MJF does that doesn't sit well with me is like it's like you're brandishing it out there, like you're trying to over heel it. Like, we get it, man. You're a great heel, dude. You don't have to be like.
Well, you're a different type. You're a different type of fan, though. Like you want to be in it, which is awesome. There's other people today who are like Max's contemporaries that knows that he's acting. They know he's performing, and they know he's out there. Max is one of my favorite people, and I've known him virtually since his first week of wrestling practice. He's great. And I didn't think he was going to be this prodigy because he didn't show that then. I knew he was good, but as he's getting older, he knows what boundaries to go. He knows what buttons to push. He understands how to read humans and what bothers them, and that's what you do. That's what like Jimmy Cornette talks about all the time and on his stuff. They go out to a bar, they go out here, they go to a restaurant, they go to this, cue sticks start flying, like it's just what happens. And that's the wrestling I grew up with in that same environment. I miss that. I miss the steroided up, coked out guys. Wrestling was way more fun back then.
Well, I was going to ask you, I mean, like it sounds like that's the case because it is a weird place right now in wrestling with like social media coming in. I've seen a lot of stuff in the chat about social media and everything, but Elder Sauer in the chat saying the MJF stays in character on social media and not everybody else in the business is on board with. And you're like in an era where like some people are like changing their names on social media to their real names and not being that person. And even on the Eli Drake show in Carnyland, I think he and was it the interview with Brian Pillman Jr. or something where they kind of they were kind of debating that, like going back and forth on that. So you're more in line, it sounds like, with own it, like just own who you're supposed to be.
Because in wrestling, you can still do that. Like George Clooney can't walk around being his 80 characters he's played in movies. He's an actor. Wrestling, the mystique around wrestling and why I always felt wrestling worked is because the people, much like a Mickey Mouse or a character, they are that character all the time. Like in marketing at Disneyland or the Disney parks, it went away for a while. Mickey himself just became kind of a mascot. They stopped selling him. He's in a tuxedo for a reason because he's hosting you. He's welcoming you to this place. And he's a multi-time Academy Award winning actor. Like, people today don't think of Mickey Mouse as that, but that's how it was presented for decades. And then the 80s came around in the Michael Eisner time, and then they're like, oh, we just make hundreds of millions of dollars off those three circles. That's what he is. He's not an Oscar winning television host he's from the silent era. You can't meet Charlie Chaplin today. You can't meet Buster Keaton today, but you sure can meet Mickey Mouse. So, in the same token for wrestling, you can meet Ric Flair, and you can meet Sting, and you can meet Nikita Koloff. And when you see them, they will be that. They're not going to break that. If Sting has that makeup on, he will not be Steve Borden.
It's an interesting thought. It's so tough because I think I think what some people might be afraid of is that then what happens in their real life, you know, like if people just assume they're this person. You guys kind of talked about this a little already, you know, like if somebody's
but I
be
mean,
a
that's
racist
and it should be, and I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but my company, we're raising money for the bail funds and Black Lives Matter and stuff. So I am a very liberal person, but I also believe in privacy. There are right ways to act 1000% for sure, but you, just because someone doesn't think the same way as you, and they might go the other direction, you know, you can't disown them, you can't hate them. All you can do is try to educate them to the way of your thinking, and hopefully you're open enough to listen to their thinking. You know, I'm not a religious person, but I don't kill people for going to church. You know, that's their business. And I wish more people would just look at it as black and white, because that's what it is. There is no gray. Coming up in the 90s, that's when the gray area started and everything became, oh, that's the gray. There is no gray. There is right and there is wrong. You treat people a certain way, you have consequences if you don't. Race is a different situation, and right now it's magnifying for good reason. But it's just, you know, I don't feel that you can vilify someone, especially when you grew up in a different time. Like people my age, I was entertained by people from the 20s, and they were still on television, whether it was Sid Caesar or Milton Berle or Bob Hope or whoever was on television entertaining us, you know, Richard Pryor or whomever in there too, from the 60s. George Carlin, whoever you want to throw in there. But if you think a different way, I don't believe that, especially if you come from a different time. Like right now, everything is coming to light, which is beautiful. It needs to happen from the Catholic Church and everything. Everything needs to come up, absolutely. And it needs to be made right. But don't hate on someone because they have a different view. Now, if they act on that, if there's violence, if there's a death, if there's brutality and physicality, that's a different story. But if someone just thinks a different way, you just have to let them do that, because that's their right.
Very well said. Very well said.
I'll jump in here and not lighten the mood a little bit, but so in your opinion, you know, along the lines of what we're talking about, do you think social media as a whole, and this may be too broad of a question, but do you think it's helped or hindered professional wrestling as a sport?
Both. I think social media is great. I use it all the time. I don't know if I'm using it right, but I'm using it all the time. And in the negative side, it killed a lot of the mystique. It exposed a lot. And I'm not just talking about like the Ultimate Warrior being homophobic or whatever. I'm not talking about that. It exposed it really pulled the curtain way back, like Oz, and you saw the wizard and it was just some little old man. Like the magic trick is diluted. It's not fun anymore. You're not seeing a magic show. You know, it's not Copperfield making the Statue of Liberty disappear. You're at some carnival with a couple of coconut shells and pick the card or whatever. It's basic. So I believe we've evaluated and killed generation loss. Like, just imagine, you know, if you came from the tape trading days, if you had a master tape and then you got a copy of the master tape, and then you made a copy for your friend, and he made a copy, and she made a copy, and everyone made all these copies. By the time you got to the last copy, it was washed out, it was fuzzy, and it just like water for cascades, and it's just ugly. And that's what the internet has done. It has really done a lot of good, and it's done an awful lot of bad, because people are anonymous. No one's necessarily accountable for their actions or what they say. And they could be completely wrong too. But if enough people believe in the individual and the story and the believability of the acquisition, accusation. It's fact.
Yeah, I go back and forth on it. I mean, there are some times where, in some ways, having that curtain pulled back is almost cool for me as a wrestling fan. I mean, it's intriguing. It's like watching behind the scenes of a movie, you know, because you want to know. You're a production guy, and I'm into that kind of stuff as well. So I like to see how it's made, you know. And but then there's other times where it is just like a little bit uncomfortable. I'm like, I don't want to know that guy thinks that, you know. I want to just see him as his character. And so yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. I just wanted to get your kind of opinion overall of that, because I think it just honestly, it just depends for me. You know, sometimes
it does.
Sometimes I love it and sometimes I hate it. So
yeah, same thing with me. You know, it's when you need to get a message out to the masses, and hopefully it's correct, then you know it does great. But if it's just a bunch of rumor and false information, you know, it's sad because it could ruin someone's life, and no one has remorse for it. It's like, all right, we'll just wait for the next thing. And I come from TV news, so when I hear, you know, today this current, like, you know, broadcasting or the media's not your ally or we're lying to you, the news doesn't make up the news. The news reports the news. Yes, it's a show. It's a TV show you're watching, the news, but you can't make things up. There's things you can alter, you know, to sensationalize the story, but the core bit of the story is usually there. And 85-90% of the time, depending on the market, you're going to get the facts, you know. But if you're being told that the media is bad and the narrative is not to your liking today, because now you have this global conversation, well, then that's what it is. The media is bad. They're horrible. They lie to us. And that's really bad. Hurts a lot of people. Like, you know, I'm pretty active on Facebook. I'm pretty confrontational. If I see someone saying something just bizarre, and especially if it comes from, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican or a Democratic agenda propaganda site, but when I see someone putting something up there that is just so far out, and I'm like, where the hell did these people read that? Or they'll say something, and else I write on it and say, provide a link to the source. They will never, ever, ever do it. Or the meme conversations. It's like, do you not realize that someone is sitting somewhere making all these memes because they know your dumbass is going to share it? I can't.
Man,
I just
some of
can't
our conversations
believe,
between Will and Gary and I are just nothing but memes. Just meme after meme.
it's like a new language.
We'll have a whole conversation all day, just memes.
Man, that's impressive.
Yeah,
I can only imagine how you order dinner.
he's only partially joking. I mean, no, I get exactly what you're saying, but that it's like it is becoming a new language for the world. Like it is just like everybody can just do a straw man meme for like literally any situation. So that's like
it's like
being clever is more.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like new hieroglyphics.
Right.
Yeah. It's true.
Someone in the future is going to see this, like, what the hell? These people were. Who is this guy? What is this? Why is everyone rolling their eyes? Who's that little girl with the face? Like, what's her story? You know, it's like no one thinks about that though. No one thinks about what you're going to leave behind.
Right.
Do you have a favorite submission move? I'm just kidding. That's not a real question. I mean, if you got one, feel free. But I was like, I don't know how to tie that back in.
I think a good headlock. If someone could put a really good headlock on, that's cool. But you know what my favorite finish is that nobody likes to do because it's not believable today, but I love it. Over the top rope sunset flip. Everybody hates it. I'll say, you know, we'll be in a meeting, blah blah blah. Over the top rope sunset flip. I didn't do that. All right, we'll do the same shit everybody else is doing. Do the 10 punch in the corner where no one reacts to it. Yeah, because you're punching a man in the face 10 times with no marks, and he's not fighting back because that's real.
Yeah, and not bleeding afterwards. He just took it.
Right, and no cops are involved, really.
Right. Well, it's a wrestling ring. Everything's okay in a wrestling ring.
That's right. It's sanctioned by the State Athletic Commission.
That's right. Oh man, Dave, I feel like we've already taken like so much of your freaking time. You have been way more generous, especially for us to like, people don't know this, but I mean, we literally just had this conversation about you jumping on and you were like super cool about just coming and hanging out. This has been amazing. Like just having you here to educate us on all of this stuff. Like we usually jump into these things. I mean, we've been lucky to have like Aldis and Lagana and Thunder Rosa was on here last week and stuff like that. And I thought this week, like, well, you know, we're just gonna have to figure out something to talk about. And then David Marquez came in and saved the day. It still made us look good and like we're legit. So I have to say that. I have to.
So we'll see you at 8:30 next Tuesday, right? You come back on. You just be part of the show now.
Well, it's funny because I think I have my show at 7:00 California time on Tuesdays called The Marquez Mentality on the United Wrestling Network page, where we're virtually doing this. My staff has come up with different themes for the week or the days. I don't know what they're all called off the top of my head, but you know, we'll present old matches from, I think they call it Heritage Hall. Then we have something called Work Rate, which I don't know what that means. We have a couple other things on Thursday. We have another interview that's called The Push. So people who are, I guess, standing out, they're on that show. Dustin Starr, our Memphis host, CW30 for Championship Wrestling out of Memphis, is the host of that with Nick Bonanno. I was supposed to do it tonight, but I think my guest canceled, so that's why I was available. And
perfect timing.
Yeah. So I enjoy doing this. If people are actually entertained and getting some real facts versus all the internet hoo-ha that's out there, I'm happy to talk. It's just It's just people don't like me to talk.
Well, that is not the case here, buddy.
I've literally never heard that. I've heard quite the opposite.
That's shocking. No. This has been great. I really appreciate it. And I'm one of the people, I guess, not similar to you in the sense that I do romanticize a lot of, and I think most fans probably do. So it's interesting to hear, you know, a different perspective from you that's a little more logical and a little more, I guess, grounded in you know, the business and reality of professional wrestling, and it's always a fun conversation to have. So I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you. Actually, I'll share something with you because we just pulled it out of a box. Well, I mean, if you're a longtime fan of NWA Hollywood, these were our NWA Heritage Tag Team titles.
Ooh.
That we just pulled out of the out of a box.
That's cool.
Yeah, and the neat part is
an exclusive.
The tag champs, if you look real close, if you're that much of a geek, they're holding the belts. That is the actual belt. Look at that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So,
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. I'll send you my address on by DM or something. You can shoot one over to me or something.
I'd be happy to send you a pin.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
How does that feel that the TV title came back, Dave, and you were putting out those TV title pins? And now that NWA is bogarted that.
No, I think it's really cool. You know, we've always had a TV title on our show. In fact, that's the other belt we pulled out of storage. This is the original MAV TV Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, presented by Lucas Oil title.
That's cool.
And yeah, and said Lucas Oil Wrestling on the side and whatnot. But we've always had a TV title. And when I heard David was going to bring a TV title back, I thought that was really cool. And, I hooked him up with Dave Milliken to get a belt quickly and whatnot. But this is what our current TV title looks like in the United Wrestling Network in pin form.
Wow.
I don't know if you can see that, but.
That is cool, man. That is cool.
Yeah. And if you watch our show, Dan Joseph is the champion. So he's on the back. Yeah, that was really cool when the title came back. I was really excited, and then having Nikita there was fun and whatnot, because we never had that title when I had the NWA. We didn't have a TV title. I had a local one, but we didn't have that one. I did bring back the national title that what's his name now in WWE? I can't remember his name, but Phil Shatter was Gunner in TNA. He was our national champion. And so we brought back the national title that looks like the TV title. I don't know his name in WWE. He just got a bunch of heat for saying he liked Trump the other day online.
Oh yeah, we were just talking about him.
His real name's Chad. He's a fine guy. It's just he's extremely religious and really likes Donald Trump.
He made that clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, this is cool. I don't know. I thought we were like Jackson Riker is his name, by the way, in WWE.
WWE. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But he no, not him. What was I going to say? You do know that a lot of people are like they get real excited about belts. So it was like we were winding down and then you brought out the belts, and now the chat room like lit back up. They're like,
"Oh well, if that's the case, going nuts. Wait, there's more."
Oh boy,
this is great, man. Boy. This is great.
Yeah, I'm geeking out. I actually don't have any replica belts, but I think my wife is watching, so maybe gift idea. I would love to have. That would be like the pinnacle for me for a gift.
You don't have belts, Will?
Do what?
In your collection yet? You don't have any belts in your collection?
I don't, man. I have not acquired any replicas.
I've got a big gold, a TV, and a 10 pounds. My 10 pounds is a little struggling. I'm in the market for another one, but I got one. It's signed by Flair.
No big deal. No big deal.
Yeah, whatever.
I was looking for the United Wrestling Network World Championship, but I guess someone has it and they're photographing it because we haven't presented that yet. But here's our Hollywood Heritage title. I don't know how much you can see there, but on it is Freddie Blassie, Adam Pearce, and Gorgeous George.
That's insane.
That is amazing.
And on the side plates are the names of former champions. There's TJ Perkins, Baron Leone, John Tolis as Heritage. And these are that's the Heritage side. And on this side, you have Sean Waltman. There's TJ's name right there, TJ Perkins, and Ryan Taylor on the back there. So this is Eric Watts holds this title right now, but I'm going to share this with you because I have two of them and Joe Galley has one. Here's my Emmy Award.
Oh,
so
wow.
So and mine has a Baloo the Bear hanging off it. Joe doesn't have that. So
ours doesn't have that either.
In time.
Oh man, David Marquez, thank you so much for doing this, man. This
for sure. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, man, I can't believe it's taken this long for us to talk to you, and hopefully we'll have you back soon, because this has been a blast and an education.
Sure.
And I knew that.
Yeah,
I knew that before I talked to you. And so that was part of what was going to drive me nuts, is I'm like, where do I even take this thing? And,
Yeah, I get it.
this is good.
I get it. But thanks for the invitation, and I'm glad I was available. And it's always fun to talk and meet people. I enjoy being in Atlanta, and we'll see what happens next. I'm actually scheduled to be in Atlanta for another wrestling project that you may have seen advertised online. Where am I going to be there? It's in July. See, I'm that old that I keep a book still.
I was going to say, what is this device you're holding?
Yeah, the Ticonderoga #2. So from the 6th to the 9th, I'll be in Atlanta producing a show that you may have seen advertisement for, and I can't remember the name of it now. But Rocky Romero shared a video today about a show that's going to happen in Atlanta on pay-per-view, and I'll be producing and directing that.
Nice. Is that where Thunder Rosa's going to? I just saw her doing something, and she was going to Atlanta. Is she going there?
She might be booked on that. I'm not sure what talent. I'm handling the TV side of it. Gotcha. But it is Rocky Romero. Well, the Good Brothers are producing it with me. So,
nice. Okay.
Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows.
Oh, cool. That's awesome, man. Dave, you tell everybody where they can find you on social media, as if they're hearing you right now and they don't know you.
Twitter and Instagram are the same. I'm not really active on there as much, but it's at CWFH Marquez, Marquez. On Facebook, you can follow me or whatever. I really don't take a lot of fans because they get really upset when they find out that I'm not the guy that they see on camera, and I have views and opinions and I state them. So if you don't want to hear that, and you really are not a welcoming or loving type person, you might not want to hear my thoughts. I'm a very open person with a lot of love and acceptance. So if you think the other direction, you probably don't want to follow me. But if you do, you're welcome to. But if you send a friend request, there's a good chance if I don't know you or done something with you, I probably won't accept it. But you're welcome to follow me on Facebook. It's just David Marquez. You'll find me. My goofy face is on there. And then the websites are UnitedWrestlingTV.com, HollywoodWrestling.com, and CWF Arizona.com, I think. At CWFH.
Through you, they can find it all for sure.
Yeah, you'll see all my stuff. And, they just released a really good video today. The team put a really nice retrospective piece together on the history of the show. And we actually share some information that I've never said publicly before on the creation of the Hollywood United Wrestling Network and how NWA Powerrr kind of came to be. So if you want to check that out, it was just released earlier today.
Perfect. Well, guys, we'll let Dave go here. He has been more than generous with his time, and we're getting a lot of thanks in the chat, David. So again, Mr. Marquez, thank you. And we'll stick around and wrap this thing up and let David go so we don't hold him up anymore. I'm sure he's got old fashions to get to. So
not tonight. It's almost 8:30, and I have a meeting in the morning. So there's none of that.
All right, sir. Well, thank you very much, and we hope to talk to you again soon, buddy.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Take care.
Have a good one. Yes.
Well, I didn't think we were going to have a guest tonight.
You didn't? Because I called BS on that. When you told
you did call BS on it. I was like, no, I really didn't. No, who was originally supposed to jump on with us tonight canceled last minute, but I had been sending feelers out to people and being like, you know what? If people are going to want to see folks show up randomly on the show, I should start planning this a little bit better. And so I started trying that. And then randomly, the situation with David was he was just like, I didn't see this until right now. And this was like right as we were coming on the air. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, we'll plan something. Or we're on right now. Here's how you get there. And he's like, I'll see you in a minute. and then here he came. So
that was a lot of fun. Like I said, I mean, I love hearing that take on everything and being able to kind of get a glimpse inside, especially and he didn't like it, but the wilderness years, unfortunately, that's kind of what they're deemed as. So it was cool to really get, we haven't had a lot of insight on that era. So that was really cool.
Yeah, it amazed me actually, and J-Cal, I don't know if he's still in the chat, but he may have more insight on this. It was weird that David, I did not expect that he would not even know that was referred to that way. Like he seemed put off by that. Like what? The wilderness years.
He doesn't seem like someone who's particularly like beholden to what's being thrown out about in social media and those kind of, he's not romantic about things. So wilderness years presupposes a lot of romance. So
yeah. Folks in the chat, we love you guys. Thanks for being here. I mean, we were doing a rundown of the show. I don't know what these guys have going on or how they want this to go. We don't have to run down everything. I am curious if you guys like towards as we round out the evening here, because we have been going for a while. If you have thoughts on who you think you're most impressed with for the mayor of Carnyland, because we didn't really get to that part of it. We just got schooled in a college course on professional wrestling and production, and which I will take because we can always come back to the other stuff. But where you guys in the chat landing on Carnyland? I think the official and I'll throw to you guys too for this because I'm curious what your thoughts were. The official thing at the end of this whole deal with Carnyland was we have these folks officially announced as candidates for mayor in the town. It's Thunder Rosa, Zicky Dice, Allison Kay, Eli Drake, Aaron Stevens, Esther Addington, and then Nick Aldis, Tom Latimer, Royce Isaacs, Camille. It seems like not all of them are going to run, but they're trying to decide, or maybe they're just like entering themselves as one person and process of elimination, or I don't really know what Strictly Business is doing right now. But
yeah, and then of course we've got the spoiler that somebody is going to drop out of the race between now and next week. So any speculation about who that might be, I don't know.
Well, Strictly Business looked like they were doing some action research to determine their most favorable candidate. So I think that my guess would be it'd be one of those guys that would be dropping out next week. And then there's also hints about people possibly jumping in. The really fascinating conversation between Allison and Marty Bell, who, I thought weren't on speaking terms anymore, but apparently they are now. But the whole resting bitch face and all that kind of stuff, and Allison kind of suggesting that Esther was the only one who could beat her in the mayoral race. So that was kind of fascinating to me.
Yeah, that was weird. I have seen Esther. If you follow Allison Kay on social media, she has shown up, and it came from, I want to say it was like WOW or something like that. I don't know. There was a women's wrestling federation where I feel like she's shown up before, and kind of interesting. So I don't know. Who stood out to you guys as your favorite candidates? I'm looking at the chat right now. And by the way, getting some love for having David Marquez on tonight. So we appreciate you guys for sticking around for that. WWE Front Row is saying Camille threatened us with violence. So I feel like we have to vote for her. Wrestling with the MMA is Thunder Rosa for mayor of Carnyland. Natalia, Thunder Rosa obviously, Elder Sour, Mayor Thunder Rosa, and then a lot of love for Maureen, which I think is unrelated. But
I will say that I will say that only one candidate, and he's not even officially a candidate, rapped his way into my heart, and that was Josephus. So I don't know, guys. I might be writing in a name.
That's brilliant, man.
That's a really good point.
He even said, quote, I know that I'm not part of the NWA, end quote. And then he's had this brilliant rap. And we know Josephus has that musical background. I loved it. I mean, it's hard for me to go against either of our world champions. I thought Thunder Rosa had the best campaign slogan. I won't say please, you will say you're welcome. But Nick Aldis has Danny Deal as the world's greatest campaign manager. So, where do you go with that?
How do you feel about that, Gary?
Well, I will say that I never had I never had a problem with Danny Deals. I had a problem with the Danny Deals being Mama Storm thing. I thought that was dumb. But like Danny Deals himself, like that whole segment was pretty funny. Like Nick Aldis being on the phone with him and it's like, yeah, I guess, come on over. And there was like a knock on the door. And he's like, what? And he's like, you're already here. And he's like on the phone, like, yeah, I'll call you back. Like hangs up and he's like, dude, you were on the phone with me. Anyway, maybe it was just me, but I love it.
Are we gonna talk about Zicky Dice and mayonnaise at all?
And lick your back.
I thought it might take you off guard, but I was on his Twitch channel the other day, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys ever mess with Twitch or have ever used it before, but I used to, before live streaming on YouTube was such a big deal, I used to watch Twitch sometimes when I was working on other stuff in like my office / man room or whatever, because I don't know, I've always been kind of into the, and this is gonna sound dirty, but like the voyeuristic side of things, like the like you're just watching someone live their life or doing this stuff, and Twitch felt like that. Like it was just these people just like chatting, and it blew my mind. Like
sometimes
there was an audience just like there is now. Like there's an audience like that you can do this, you can make a show and people will come. Like, you can build a community, and Twitch was the first time I saw that.
One of his first three, I think I was one of his first 3 Twitch subscribers, because we had actually had him on Piper's Nuts that very day. And he's like, hey man, I'm going to be launching Twitch here in an hour or so. And I was like one of the first 3. And that like that night he went live and was like, oh, come on, Piper, this is going to be great. It was just him playing video games. It's like, that's all it was. It's just,
he was playing poker on the one I saw, but I mean, somebody, or either he just like hunkered down and figured this trash out, or he went invested in the help. But he's got a good looking stream, like a really good looking stream. It looks like he's sitting at a poker table, and like he's all the sound effects and the scrolls and the like. It is just, it's pro, like it's legit. And he's got people watching, but as people subscribe, I guess is where I was getting to. I was watching it, and for like every subscriber, he apparently has a list of stunts he'll do, and you can request a stunt. And so like when I was watching it, like it was like mayonnaise to the face, or it was like I've got a bowl of blueberries I'll shove in my face, or like it was just like all of this stuff for like every subscription. And like subscriptions were just like firing in, and he was like, what do you want? I'm gonna do all of it. And he just started shoving mayonnaise all over his face and like smashed blueberries on his head, and it was real weird. But that's why tonight I was like, oh yeah, he likes mayonnaise. Like that's tame compared to what I saw the other night, like because he was just like bathing in mayonnaise on that show. And I don't know what his deal is with mayonnaise, but there it is.
That's very
mayonnaise and 8 or above.
That's what?
It's very mayoral of him.
Yeah. He called his followers disciples, and I got mayonnaise, and I got he 8 is like that's his lowest common. That's as low as he'll go, 8 or above.
He
Whatever that means.
I thought what you said, Will, and just probably unrelated, but Billy Corgan has a song called Mayonnaise. So, you know, there's that too. Probably has no connection. I don't know. Ear of cord to the forehead, I'm seeing in the chat, was apparently something. I don't know.
More friends. More friends.
He was doing raw eggs in the first show. Elder Sauer saying.
Did you hear earlier in the show when Tom Latimer said that one of his campaign pledges was he was going to make it illegal to wear fanny packs in any situation? And I was thinking back to when
he was. I thought he said he was going to require fanny packs.
Make it
mandatory. Fanny pack.
Yep.
Mandatory. Including during intercourse.
Got you. Yeah, I wrote that down wrong.
Yeah. No, I was kind of interested in that. And no, that makes sense because when you see Tom, he's usually got a fanny pack. So does Royce. Royce has a fanny pack all the time. Zicky Dice just has a $16,000 fanny pack. That's the difference. Right. Very expensive. I'm sure he keeps it on during intercourse also. Should we get fanny packs? Yeah, probably.
Like this is the NWA Podcast fanny packs?
100%. We should have this is the NWA fanny packs.
Gravy cake
we should make sure gravy cake fanny packs. Yeah, guys, man. It's gravy cake. Hashtag gravy cake. Hashtag NWA fam. J Cal, yes, David Marquez is awesome. I love that guy. He was fantastic. I don't even know what to do after that because he just came in and just put on a lecture for, like not in a bad way. I mean, he just like schooled us for however long that was.
Yep.
One other thing that rubbed me wrong on there was when Aaron Stevens.
Rob, why is this show always got something that's rubbing you wrong now?
Because I want consistency, man. I want things to be. I'm a military guy. I make my bed first. I make my wife get up so I can make the bed. I like things to be neat, and I didn't like how Aaron Stevens, who I love Aaron Stevens. Y'all know that. I mean, shoot. But he said that he is the only American to ever study Mongrovian karate. And I'm like, dude, you sold lessons for $99. My daughters are both. My youngest is a white belt with yellow stripe. My middle daughter Piper broke the Mongrovian oath. You're not the only American to study Mongrovian karate, man. You're contradicting your own gimmick, dude.
I mean this with all due respect and because I love you, but you said you're a man of consistency, and then you like criticize Eli Drake for some of the things he says, and it's like you got a real issue there, and then you come in with some of this BS about some Mongrovian oak and.
That's not big, dude, man. Where's the You remember that they were selling those lessons? They were selling the lessons for $99.99.
Remember when it happened, Rob?
Whatever, man. You know what?
This is part of our dynamic.
I'll say this, man. Speaking of consistency. So I noticed for the first time tonight, and I don't know why this didn't register with me before. I guess because I consumed so much NWA at once. But the fact that, like, I just thought, I was like, why does Aaron Stevens look so weird? He's like looking off in the distance. And then I remembered the no eye contact thing. And I was like, dude, he's carrying that over. That is so brilliant. And so he's always like looking to the side of the camera. So you literally can't make eye contact with him. That was just, I thought that was brilliant. I love that.
That is pretty great. I didn't notice that until you had tweeted it or something, I think.
You'll notice it now. Go back and watch, like, because I've noticed it the past couple of weeks, and I'm like, he just looks weird. Why does he look so weird? And it's because he's like he's always doing this, and he's like his face will be turned, I guess, like this, but he's always like his eyes are. It's just brilliant. I love it. Just those little subtle things. I love that.
Well, you
I
notice
do
I
think
studied at the same school of acting. You guys have never seen my eyes before. I'm always like that as well.
Stop.
we're just
I think all of our brains are so full after talking to David Marquez. It's like we're not even
I think
capable
so.
of having like a normal conversation now.
honestly, all I thought of are just the types of opinions that Aaron Stevens could express that I think would just break Rob. And I just don't, because he loves him so much. And I don't know. Aaron Stevens is into some stuff, though, by the way. He's like a Freemason. Like, I saw him on his Twitter feed or somewhere. I don't know. That's pretty interesting. If you're a conspiracy theorist.
Hey, Will, you got to get your household in line here. Natalia Martin is saying evil things out there in the chat. She's saying evil things, man. Mongrovian Karate, that's a fake nation that was made up for a storyline.
She's a very smart woman.
She's educated.
She is.
But is she a doctor? That's the real question.
Well, if she's not, that probably means she's in less debt than I am. So,
what did you guys think about Eli Drake's promo? He like had a campaign commercial. I did say so. The one thing I thought is I don't know who's doing the production on these things, right? Like, I feel it's like there are things that I can tell. This is probably like behind the scenes stuff that may or may not be important, but I feel like there's like stuff you can tell like Josephus has a hand in. And then there's like stuff that like doesn't seem like Josephus work. It seems like something else. And like Eli Drake stuff always feels like it's something else. Like, I don't know that it's Lagana doing it, and I don't know that it's Josephus doing it. I could be wrong. I'm interested in that, but it looks like Eli Drake's either is he hustling and running this thing himself, or is he
he's doing it
somebody
himself, man? He kind of alluded to that, I think, on one of the Eli Drake shows, that he is kind of a control freak with that kind of stuff, and he wants to, I think he's figuring it out and doing it himself. That's probably why it's got a different look and feel to it.
It's pretty damn awesome, that hustle, like that's good for him. Shoes of a champion, that guy. I'll tell you what, though, just being honest, that day in the place and then rewatching it on Powerrr, that was a funny freaking moment in life. Like, it just was authentic. They do be leaning into it, though. And, making a shirt about it and stuff. I mean, I guess I see making a shirt about it. Hopefully it sold. But I don't know. It just felt like one of those things that was funnier, like just in the sperm of the moment. And Ty Zicky Dice, we already talked about him a little bit. You said Zicky Disciples, but he also said Carnylandians. And I thought that was interesting. Never heard that before. Let's look at, there was a question mark promo where somebody hooked up with somebody on Bumblebee, which is the Mongrovian dating app. And, they played Yahtzee, and then somewhere along the way, I don't even remember the context for this, but what I would wear on a t-shirt is Pineapple Armageddon. That happened. And I kind of enjoyed that. And I was like, well, that's gonna be a t-shirt at some point. Pineapple Armageddon. Then the rap video that you alluded to.
It's
that was
like
fun.
with the question mark and Josephus, not to say that there's any connection between the two, but it's like, I feel like I spend a lot of time reading. I have a lot of quirky interests, but I love to delve into lots of books, man. I've got 4 or 5 books going at a time all the time, but I always feel like something that the question mark or Josephus is doing is like very intelligent, and I'm just not getting it. Like, they're making some like John Paul Sartre reference or a Kierkegaard reference or something like that. I'm like, man, I'm just gonna pretend like that's smooth, man. You know what I'm saying?
Rob's like furiously going through his whole library after every episode of Carnyland, trying to figure out the reference. It's a pineapple
I'm
Armageddon. What
Googling.
is
I
that from?
Googled, no joke, man. I Googled Pineapple Armageddon just to make sure it wasn't some cult movie reference in Scientific Film Society. I was like, that's a reference to something. I told Tanya, I was like, no, that's a movie reference. I don't know what it is, but I know it is. I know it is one. So
It's the most Rob Stinson thing
You're
I've
thinking
ever
of like
heard.
Pineapple Express or something.
great movie, man. Great movie.
What'd you guys think of the May Valentine story?
I thought it was interesting. I mean, Aldous kind of set the bar high with the Carney Chris story on episode 1. So it wasn't wrestling related. So I guess it was a funny story, but it wasn't. It didn't hit home like the Aldous, Tales from Carnyland did for me.
Here's the thing about May, man. It's so, like, I really, really like May because she plays a certain role in the show, but Gary, Gary can tell you this. This is a highly, highly cultured and accomplished woman who is a journalist, who's a best-selling author, and her life is Carnyland. Even absent the wrestling, her life is Carnyland. And so this is, to me, it was like a really neat perspective because I remember like my first engagement with her ever was when we back in February when we were in New York and we were messaging back and forth about Broadway, and she was so well informed about all that. And then she tells the story, and I'm like, gosh, man, Carnyland is everywhere. It's even in, and this goes back to my theme in my life with what we produce, that wrestling is high culture, man. The things that you see in theater and music and stage production and all that, it's wrestling too. They live the same life. So I really kind of did. I dug it, man. I thought it was cool.
Yeah, I thought it was a neat story. Just a very interesting story. Like I could not tell how legit it was, but then by the end they were kind of insisting that was a true story. I was like, wow, what a weird ass story that some magician just appears and does a bunch of magic tricks and proposes to her friend, and just, it's Vegas, man.
When we go off live, I've got a story to tell you that's very similar to that. So which leads me to believe that it's real. So
what did Tanya get into? We got a Montgrovian Unmasked. We kind of ran through that stuff. Esther Addington. I was very impressed that Marty Bell, like, that they leaned into this. I've heard them talk about this just aside. And even like when I talked to Allison Kay, and this is their words, not mine, resting bitch face. The Marty Bell talking about that, them trying to make Allison smile. And I'll tell you, that was intimidating people that I've talked to in the NWA, besides David Marquez, just for the vast amount of knowledge. Also, one was Allison Kay until I finally had her on, and she was fantastic. But it was because Allison Kay looked very serious all the time, and apparently that's just how Allison Kay be looking. She keeps a serious face, and. But anyway, so I did enjoy that segment just because I kind of connected with it in that way. But I did love the Danny Deals, Nick Aldis stuff, that it came back to them and Nick Aldis, like him showing him the video. And he's like, you got to do this. Who else is the champion of multiple worlds? Like, Earth has a crisis. You're the man. Like,
the world's champion.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. And he shows them the video, and Nick Aldis has just got that, like, I'm gonna win. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah. A brighter tomorrow today, he says.
That was good. In front of the American flag, the Brit.
Indeed.
Well, I think he's probably got dual citizenship by now. But either way. So we're getting ready to wind down. If there's any questions, if there's anything else you guys want to add in the chat, now is the time to do it. Get your questions or your discussion points in. we have talked a little bit about a lot of Thunder Rosa love in the chat tonight as far as the mayor of Carnyland. I also just asked the question, who's getting eliminated? Rob, who's the least likely to make it through next week for you?
The least likely, probably Tom Latimer, man. I don't see him challenging Camille, and I think he's going to end up standing by his woman. I think he'll be the first one out.
All right. Will.
Plus, we can't have two candidates that are associated with fanny packs. So
that is a rule in politics.
Yeah. well done.
Nobody mentioned, like, I mean, we totally forgot to mention Royce's, who's also known for the fanny pack, but he had a very nice dictating to the Southerners, I think, like just the Southern United States. I don't know, Rob, you got a look on your face. I don't even know if I want to know.
Yeah, I think he'll be one of the stronger candidates. I think this might lead up to some tension between Aldous and Royce. And you saw that his numbers, his return. Well, Danny Dills points out, what does he say? He says Royce numbers is really good, and then we find that we're not quite sure what Royce numbers means, if that's Royce's numbers or if that's a person. So, but I think he's going to end up being one of the stronger candidates.
All right, fair enough. Getting some stuff saying Royce Isaacs is out. Will, where do you land on this?
And I'm gonna go on a limb and give an unpopular opinion. That's probably gonna upset Rob, but that's just kind of what I do these days. And I'm gonna say in a surprise move, Aldous doesn't make it through the week. I think it's gonna be a shocker. I think it's gonna be front page headline NWA news. Something happens, could be concerning anything, could be concerning, tension within Strictly Business or something like that. But somehow I think he shocks the world and has to exit the race.
Well, Will is not wrong about many things, but he is dead wrong about this. You're dead wrong with it.
Have we received anything from Carnyland letting us know in the Patreon how the votes are tallied or how this happens? Because last I looked, we hadn't. So I don't know exactly how this process is going to work. Yeah, I see.
No, they did say vote. Don't forget to vote on there, but I haven't seen the link either. Kaylee saying flyover states in there. Flyover states would be key in this.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. Crypto Zoom Baller. I don't know what the status of Jazz is. She was at AEW last I saw her, and getting some votes for Royce Isaacs out. Do you think his insurance policy will fail him? No, I don't know. It would be interesting if like somebody like Royce did make it further, and then he's trying, a guy like Aldous is trying to manipulate the story from Royce being the candidate. Unpopular opinion here. I like Tom Latimer's his package. It's not of it. His promotional video. Like I think
hashtag Piper's good. Notes. Daddy. what did Gary mean when he said
Piper, go to bed. Go to bed, Piper. Natalia's in the chat saying Will's pretty spot on about this stuff. She'd bet money on him. Not a lot of money, but some money. Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% sure that you're wrong. He's usually right. So.
All right, guys, let's wrap this thing up. I love you guys, but I got to go to bed. I got to work in the morning, and not this job. This job doesn't pay, despite all the discussion we had about it today.
Rumors.
Yeah, right.
So at the end here, for what it's worth, tell everybody where you can be found.
I'll go.
or I'll just go F myself. I don't know.
Yeah, no. At Hey It's Will. It's right down here on pretty much every social media platform. Find me on there. Let's connect.
I don't know why that was so funny, but it was. I am at. Shut up, dude. I am at R Stinson 4, and I'm also on Stinson Vision. But all of my video content is on at the NWA Pod, and this is the NWA Podcast. And of course, we do a show called Table Talk also that I have not put on there because it's not specifically wrestling related, but it involves my youngest daughter, just the trials and travails of fatherhood. Wrestling creeps in from time to time. It's a lot of fun, so feel free to check that out. That is Table Talk, but you can find all that content on Stinson Vision at R Stinson 4. You can find me on MySpace at Robert Stinson. If you're still on MySpace, I do not do TikTok. I do not do Snack Shack. Instagram, I'm on. I've got something. I've got a page on there, but really it's just the pictures that my wife tags me in. So I'm trying to get much better at that. Anyway, that's where you can find me.
Very good. Very nice. Very nice, concise, to the point plug there. Appreciate that.
Oh man, when we get laid on This Is the NWA After Dark, you never know what's going to happen. I'm not whiskey, Gary. I have not been drinking whiskey, so I'm tired of seeing that.
Now you're vodka and cranberry, Gary.
No.
I seen it. I seen it.
No, you did.
The whole world saw it, bro.
Clear liquors are for rich white women on diets. What was I saying? This is Gary Horn on all the social medias. And the show is at the NWA Pod. We got to get out of here because this is falling apart.
Look how tired Gary is.
What am I doing? I don't know. And Rob's over there. I'm just like laughing at Rob because he's like all giddy over there. He's like,
I'm with my boys, man. I'm always giddy on the show. My best pals, man. I love this, man. We got J Cal in the house. We got Natalia. We got our friends living our best life. I'm always giddy, man.
Well, say goodbye.
What could be better than this?
Because everybody's going to bed now. All right. Well, we love you guys. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Everybody in the chat. This has been awesome, and God bless us. We had another guest this week, and I feel great about it. And here's hoping for next week. We'll find out. You never know who's going to show up on This Is the NWA After Dark. So tune in next week. Ta-ta for now.